Chapter 21, Holy Light Sealing Sword. Activate. The bone dragon beat its wings, and Chess, riding the curse dragon, hovered above the merchant ship's deck. Ina and her two companions, along with the crew who had bravely rushed out, were using the ship's emergency magic tools to put out the blaze. The inferno was quickly brought under control, reduced to only scattered embers. Not bad at all. This feeling of fighting side by side with everyone, Chess said, resting his chin on a hand and sighing with a mock-serious air. Ina's fair face was streaked with ash and sawdust. She couldn't help but shout up at the sky, "This kind of fighting side by side is not what we wanted at all." "Oh, my ship, my cargo." Captain Lambert, who had been boasting about the vessel's sturdiness, now squatted on the deck and wailed. The merchant crew, who should have been hiding in the cabins, had also come out. They looked at the chaotic scene with hollow faces. Oddly, after hurriedly putting out the fire, much of their earlier tension and despair had evaporated. The main body of the pirate force still glowered at them from across the water, yet there was a strange comfort in Chess's words, fighting side by side. "All right, Captain Lambert, damage is inevitable in battle," Chess said with a smile, trying to reassure him. "Don't worry. Once I catch those pirates and collect the bounty, I'll help you get the ship fixed." It was, of course, part of Marshall's scheme. If Lambert hadn't allowed them on board, the pirate attack might never have happened. Chess didn't wreck things just because he was careless or irresponsible. He simply disliked fighting with restrictions. Or maybe he was just lazy about worrying over small matters. Even reckless troublemakers like Natsu and Gray always had Master Makarov to shoulder the cleanup. That was why the title, Fiore's Destroyer King, wasn't handed out lightly. It came with a hefty price tag. Chess, however, wasn't short of money and could afford to pay. Lambert, his chubby face streaked with tears, nodded blankly. Suddenly he cried out, "Watch out behind you!" "Damn fairy tale, to hell with you!" a pirate yelled. One of the attackers, who'd counted on his magic armor to protect him from the hellfire, had slipped into the shadows and now lunged at Chess, saber flashing. In a heartbeat, the blade appeared at Chess's right shoulder, aimed to cut down. But Chess hadn't been caught off guard. He'd seen the fleeing rat from the start. The preset trap card Hexagram Seal, triggered with a hum. A golden hexagram flared to life and bound the pirate in place. When you declare an attack on an enemy, you should pay attention to the face-down card zone, Chess said with a smile. The frozen pirate was too terrified to follow what he meant. Chess didn't give him time. He sprang from the cursed dragon's back, magic surging through his body and coalescing in his right leg. "Taste this move. Chess kick!" His right foot slammed into the pirate's abdomen with a heavy thud. Ribs shattered. The man went limp. Chess's momentum carried him forward, and he flew straight at the nearest pirate vessel, crashing into it. The impact made the ship shudder as alarms rose across the decks. Thick smoke rolled back with the sea breeze, revealing the scene. Chess stood with the unconscious pirate beneath him, eyes sweeping over the assembled buccaneers until they landed on the pirate captain, Clooney Blood, guild master of the Dark Guild Swamp of Abyss. "Good afternoon, scum," Chess said, flashing a brilliant smile. "Are you going to surrender nicely, or do you want me to beat you all into submission first?" Clooney, lounging in a massive hide chair and twisting a skull necklace between his fingers, sneered. "The aerial unit was only our weakest. Do you think wiping them out means you've won? All the fairy tale wizards in the rumors are so arrogant, are they?" he added, contempt in his voice. Chess kicked the stunned pirate aside and dusted himself off. "That's right," he replied honestly. "You." Clooney's prepared harangues died on his lips. "You're thick-skinned, but so what? What are you going to do against all of us?" he said, sweeping his eyes to indicate his men. The pirates drew blades and advanced, their numbers giving them courage even while the bone dragon circled ominously. Their captain's presence bolstered them. "It'll be a bit troublesome," Chess observed, flipping a magic card between his fingers. "Magic card, Holy Light Seal Sword, activate!" A brilliant flurry of light split the sky. 3 enormous swords of holy light descended and hovered around the pirate ship like a sealing ring. Radiant, binding magic poured from them. To the horror of the pirates, their bodies felt suddenly constrained by some terrifying law. They could not move, no matter how hard they struggled. Even Natsu, strong as he was, would have found it nearly impossible to break that seal. These pirates, with their weak magic reserves, were helpless. Chess could have eliminated them instantly by other means, but the commission demanded that they be captured alive. After a moment's thought, he chose the Holy Light Seal Sword. Even if Marshall later refused to acknowledge his work, likely, Chess could still take the prisoners as evidence to the council and secure the reward. Clooney glared at the hovering swords. "Some kind of binding card magic?" he said, propping his hands on his knees. He unleashed a wild surge of magic power, a terrifying storm of aura that made Ina and her companions flinch. Slowly, his hunched shoulders straightened. He felt his body return to normal. A fierce grin spread across his face. He stamped the deck so hard it splintered and roared. "Against absolute magic power, your little trick won't work." "Phew? You can't control me," Chess retorted, looking up casually at him. "Oh, because there was something I needed to confirm. I didn't restrict your movement," Chess added offhandedly. That simple, casual admission cut the tense atmosphere like a knife. A crow wheeled overhead and then froze mid-flight. Clooney's grin faltered and locked in place. His fists tightened, the veins on his forehead bulged with fury. In that instant, he felt ridiculous, like a clown trapped by his own bravado. Clooney's eyes glittered with a fierce light as he fixed his stare on the calm figure of Chess. Two dark purple magic circles flared on his forearms. Black mist poured from them, coating his outstretched hands and forming long, night-colored demonic claws. Under the glow of the Holy Light Seal Sword, the claws shimmered with a menacing black radiance, like a single swipe could shear through steel. As the feared leader of a dark guild, this was the kind of magic he had once taken pride in. It was vaguely like Urza's Knight type, both specialized in close combat. But whereas Urza's weapons came from another dimension, Clooney forged his weapons by compressing raw magic into lethal form. "Brat, you're getting on my nerves," he sneered, licking one demonic claw. "Keeping you alive might serve my plans, but first I'll make you feel," he hissed, "what true pain and despair are." He crouched, then exploded forward with blinding speed. Black light flashed. The demonic claw arced viciously and lunged at Chess. Metal rang as blades met. Clooney's face flickered with surprise as an unfamiliar figure was reflected in his sharp pupils. An elf swordsman, steady-eyed, clad in steel with a purple cloak billowing, grinding his long sword against the demonic claw. Clooney followed the blade to Chess, who stood behind the elf swordsman, his right hand slightly raised and holding a glittering card. Fire-breathing bone dragons and holy swords were one thing, but card magic that could summon a humanoid elf swordsman? Clooney's chest tightened at the weight transmitted through the long sword in the elf's hands. He had fought many card magicians back when he led the Swamp of Abyss and thought he understood them. Flamboyant magic, often powerful, but their bodies, their duelists, were usually laughably weak. So he had intended to close quickly and deliver a killing blow to Chess. He had not expected the duelist to hold such a card. "I'll leave it to you, elf swordsman," Chess said calmly, and the card's name appeared in Clooney's mind like an emblem. Elf Swordsman of Fickle Enemies, 4-star monster card. Skilled with the blade, stalwart in battle, unyielding in will. The elf nodded at Chess, cried out low, gripped his hilt with both hands, and drove forward. The sheer force pushed Clooney back. He stumbled meters and barely kept his footing. The elf flipped his long sword in a slicing to chopping motion, used the momentum of a high leap, and brought the blade down toward Clooney's head. Clooney was no coward. He stomped, swung his right arm, and deflected the blow with his demonic claw. From an unexpected angle, his left claw lunged for the elf's abdomen. The sharp talon pierced steel armor and emerged from the elf's back with a sickening sound. The elf shattered into fragments, a heroic figure breaking apart into pieces and scattering. "Fragile toys," Clooney spat. "If all your cards are this junk, you might as well beg for mercy now." He grinned, reveling in the humiliation. He wanted to see Chess, this famed S-class mage of fairy tale, kneel and cry like the lesser magicians who took commissions and called themselves righteous. But instead of panic, a flash of swordlight came from the side. Clooney raised his claw to block and was blasted through the air by the force, crashing into the pirate ship's cabin. Planks splintered. The cabin collapsed into a ruin. Clooney smashed free of the wreckage and turned, furious, only to see the elf swordsman standing again, sword gripped, face cold and silent. He should have been gone. If you don't show real skill, you can't break the elf swordsman's defense. Leader Clooney, Chess said slowly, reclining in a beast-skin chair and leisurely sipping a cup of tea he'd somehow procured. Theoretically, as long as the duelist lived, a summoned monster didn't truly cease to exist, but that didn't mean endless summoning. If a monster was destroyed in battle, it entered a period of slumber. For example, a black magician girl struck by Ignia's roar had slept for 3 days before waking. Cards with revival effects, things like Monster Reborn or Premature Burial, could end that slumber early, but chess treated such cards as precious trump cards and rarely used them. The reason the elf swordsman could return so quickly in this fight, however, was his inherent effect. He could not be destroyed by enemies stronger than himself. Clooney's anger flared at the explanation. Chess sat composed as ever. For example, magic that breathes searing flame, Chess added casually. Clooney's face darkened. From his reactions and the exchange just now, Chess judged that Clooney probably didn't have flame magic. Marshall, the old schemer who'd sent Clooney, hadn't told him everything. If Chess had already suspected Marshall was the mastermind at 99%, he was now sure. A gust of wind swept the deck as Clooney, not a man to trust omens, lashed out with his magic. Demonic claws extended again, and he launched into brutal close combat with the elf swordsman. Clooney was an S-class fighter, far beyond ordinary mages. The 4-star elf's limits showed. The swordman would be torn apart in a few exchanges, only to return because of his undying effect. Frustratingly, he could not find a way past that defense to strike the summoner. After tearing the elf apart a few more times and realizing the duel would exhaust him, Clooney stopped the reckless assault. He leapt back, putting distance between himself and the repeatedly reviving swordsman. "Heh, as expected of fairy tale. Troublesome," he muttered. Black mist curled as Clooney dispelled the demonic claws and touched the skull necklace at his throat. "You're good, brat. Among all the clients, you're the first to make me release this magic fully. But this is where it ends for you." Crack! Clooney crushed the skull in his hand. Ancient power, colder and heavier than anything before, erupted from it like an icy tide, filling the deck with a chilling, oppressive aura. Clooney straightened, chest proud, and raised both arms above his head, fingers locking into a strange pose. Iragudo, Nay, Will, Miweng, Dales, Elcantius. He chanted an obscure ancient language in a low voice. From his palms, a dark green, chaotic vortex unfurled. The power it pulled at the surrounding space. The sea churned, and the pirate ship shuddered. Wait, Guildmaster. If you use that here, we won't have time to evacuate," one pirate cried. "Please, at least wait until we're free from these binds." "Damn it, what are those 3 light swords? Why can't I break them?" another screamed. The bound pirates trembled with fear. They knew what Clooney was about to unleash and desperately poured magic power into breaking free to leap into the sea. It was useless. Across the deck, Chess rose from his teacup, eyes narrowing, the easy amusement leaving his face. He hadn't been mistaken earlier. The same lost ancient magic the girl Minerva of Sabertooth had used to erase bullets, 18 fighting god magic of calamity and demon, flowed from Clooney now. The plans reached its final stage. "Catch Chess and the rest of you are useless," Clooney muttered, a sinister smile cutting his face. He brought his palms together and aimed at Ches behind the elf swordsman. "Ya good Iguala!" Chess made a single decisive move. He flipped the trap card he'd planted beside him. Boom! The compressed spatial magic power erupted like a volcano. A thick beam of energy shot skyward, striking the clouds. The impact radiated in all directions, lifting monstrous waves across the sea. A merchant ship 100 meters away rocked violently, cargo and fittings toppling. Ina and the other passengers clung to rails and masts, eyes wide with horror as the light swallowed the pirate ship. None of them had ever seen a battle like this. Their minds went blank. All they could do was pray that Chess would be all right. The blast lasted barely a dozen seconds, but to them it felt like an hour. When the beam finally dissipated and the sea settled, the black-armored pirate ship lay in ruins. Hull cracked, masts snapped, the propulsion arrays torn apart. Only a broken half of the ship floated on the heaving waves. The pirates themselves had been obliterated, dust scattered across the water. "Where are Ches and Clooney?" Ina whispered, frantic. The three searched the wreckage and saw two figures standing on the shattered bow. Their pupils dilated in disbelief. Chess stood with arms folded, his sleeveless cloak clean and exactly as before, no sign he'd been hit. Clooney, by contrast, was a ruin, wounds everywhere, limbs hanging slack and blood-soaked, his exposed chest heaving. His aura was ragged and weak. Clooney's confusion was mirrored by a colder realization. As he had cast the 18 fighting god magic, he'd seen an energy barrier appear in front of Chess, and then his attack had been reflected back at him. Cards? Those damn cards again, he croaked, blood flecking his lips. Congratulations, you guessed right. Chess smiled and snapped his fingers. A card at his feet rose and unfolded, revealing its face. Bear Force. An extraordinarily sturdy mirror barrier that blocks and completely reflects enemy attacks. The stronger the enemy's magic power, the more of the owner's magic power is consumed until the limit is reached. Chess's calm had not been carelessness. Sealing the pirates with the Saint Light protective seal sword, summoning the elf swordsman, everything had been preparation for that trap. Mirror Force demanded time and channeling. As soon as Chess recognized Clooney's use of the ancient magic to erase bullets, he'd set the idea in motion. Something that needs confirming, he'd said before the fight, and now the confirmation was done. Clooney spat blood. You lifted a rock and smashed your own foot. How noble. Chess thought inwardly, but he didn't dwell on it. Those pirates had burned, looted, and murdered honest traders like Lambert. Their end was deserved. You really want to keep fighting, Guildmaster Clooney? Chess asked lightly. Light gathered, and the undead elf swordsman reappeared at Chess's side. I can feel it clearly. Your aura's badly disordered, the swordsman said. That card must have eaten a lot of your magic power, Chess added. Clooney laughed, grim and cold. He raised his shredded right arm, and the spatial vortex twisted again. He still had enough strength for more magic. Chess only inclined his head toward the elf swordsman, and the blade man charged. You think I can't deal with this broken swordsman? Clooney roared, swinging. The space around the elf swordsman warped into a dark green whirlpool. No matter how the blade slashed, it couldn't cut through, being pulled into an alternate dimension, separated from reality itself. If it can't be destroyed, it'll be an exception, Clooney hissed. I didn't think you had a knack for cards. Talk less, worry more about yourself, Ches replied quietly. Clooney's face bloomed with murderous intent. He strode across the broken planks, bypassed the trapped elf swordsman, and closed the distance on Chess. In Clooney's mind, card mages were dependent on their cards. Without them, a card mage's personal combat ability was negligible. Chess was unharmed while Clooney was bleeding, yes, but with the swordsman out of the way, Clooney believed he could end the duel with just a few punches. The advantage, he thought, was his. Chapter 24. Passionate Fight. When Clooney strode past him aggressively, the elven swordsman suddenly stopped slashing at the rift. For a heartbeat, a faint smile crossed his stern face. Close combat with the master? Interesting. This might be enlightening. Clooney didn't notice the micro-expression. He held the chaos space in one hand and a pitch-black magic claw in the other, stepping forward with confidence until he stood directly before Chess. Seeing that Chess hadn't even reached for a card, Clooney's certainty hardened. The rebound magic had almost entirely drained Chess's power. He could no longer draw new cards. After all the effort, and after sacrificing his subordinates, this was finally his moment. Ecstatic, Clooney pictured the new era that would follow once he captured Chess and handed him over to Lord Marshal. He assumed a provocative stance and taunted. Chess only chuckled and shook his head. Under Clooney's confused gaze, Chess tore off his sleeveless cape, revealing a muscular torso crisscrossed with scars that gleamed in the red afterglow of the setting sun, badges of countless deadly battles. Clooney's confidence wavered. Those scars, were they really something a card mage would bear? A cold sweat, streaked with blood, trickled down his forehead. Unease crept in. There's really nothing I can do with you, Guildmaster Clooney, Chess said softly. If that's what you want, then as you wish. Let's begin our passionate, blood-pumping brawl. Chess stretched his knuckles and smiled. Clooney was wrong about the extent of Chess's depletion. Chess could still summon trump card monsters, even the Black Magician, but he'd save those for Lord Marshal, the true mastermind. There was no need to waste them here. Besides, Chess was curious if Clooney would drop a new card, and most of all, he loved to fight. Then everything happened at once. The sky seemed to tilt. A crow beat its wings and flew off. Pain exploded in Clooney's chest and snapped his thoughts back to reality. He found himself sprawled among the shattered timbers of the ship's bow. Through the dust, he saw Chess, the same man he'd meant to smash with 2 or 3 punches, slowly retracting the arm he'd swung. He hadn't even seen the move, and he'd been sent flying. Impossible! How? Clooney roared, furious at the thought that a mere card mage had bested him. He sent the chaos vortex twisting and deforming into a shockwave and hurled it at Chess. The blast tore through the already damaged deck, scattering debris. Chess vanished without a trace. When he reappeared, he was already above Clooney, foot raised. Clooney's pupils contracted. He rolled and barely avoided the flying kick, which smashed the bow's floor so hard it left a deep gouge. Before he could catch his breath, a gale hit his face. Chess's straight punch cut through the air like a piston. Instinctively, Clooney crossed his arms to block. Thud. The impact rang through him. The force hammered Clooney backward, dragging him across the deck until he stopped with 1 foot over the water. His arms trembled. The taste of metal filled his mouth as shattered bones screamed. Only then did the proud Dark Guild master realize how foolish he'd been to bypass the elven swordsman and try to fight Chess up close. This man before him was a monster. Fear flared in Clooney's eyes, then hardened to determination. He still had one last trump, the capture alive clause Lord Marshal had insisted on in the commission. As a guild magician, Chess could not kill him if he wanted to complete the job. With that death exemption in hand, he could throw caution to the wind and attack without holding back. "I am the pirate Clooney Blood, you brat. Kill me? You'll have to wait 100 years, he bellowed, as if reminding Chess of the commission's terms. Clutching the spatial vortex, he charged in a desperate counterattack that looked suicidal to Ina and the others across from them on the merchant ship. Chess didn't dodge. He slowly raised a finger. A card? Clooney tensed, terrified of Chess's summons. He'd developed a psychological trauma from those gestures. But Chess wasn't calling a card this time. "I summon my fists in attack position," Chess said. He balled his hands into fists and stepped forward to meet the frenzied Clooney. They crashed together like 2 pounding engines, fists blurred in the air, after images trailing every strike. Aura! Aura! The dull, relentless thud of fist hitting flesh vibrated through the wrecked ship. The shockwaves made the people watching tremble. Even Dasha Niu, an experienced close combat fighter, stared slack-jawed. The 2 men pounded each other for nearly a minute. Chess, constrained by his need to keep Clooney alive and by other limits, couldn't finish it with one decisive blow. Instead, he rode the fight out until Clooney was utterly spent. Finally, Clooney collapsed, face ashen, beaten and admitting defeat. You're stronger than those magicians who call themselves S-Class," he gasped, lying in a spreading pool of blood and staring at the sky. I lost." Chess took a deep breath, wiped blood from the corner of his mouth, and didn't hurry to bind or cart Clooney off. Instead, he turned inward, focusing on the card space in his consciousness. A card floated out in the void. Luck was with him tonight. He had drawn a new card from Clooney. It flipped over, revealing a small, blue, winged dragon. Chapter 25, A World Ruled by Gods. 4-star monster card. A wyvern that guards a mountain stronghold, skilled at high-speed aerial dives that shred enemies. It wasn't a powerful card. In the old days, it had even earned the nickname Cannon Fodder Dragon, but Chess was pleased to add it to his collection. Expanding his deck increased his magic power. Chess surfaced from the depths of his mind, signaled the elf swordsman to keep an eye on Clooney, and put the sleeveless cloak back on. The cursed dragon, which had hovered nearby the whole time, descended willingly and carried him back to the merchant ship. As soon as they landed, Ina and the others, along with Lambert and the crew, clustered around them. The survivors' faces shone with excitement. They praised Chess and thanked him over and over for saving them. "Everyone, don't make such a fuss. Beating those pirates was the result of all of us working together," Chess said with a smile. "Not true. It was mostly you, Mr. Chess. We only helped a little," Ina and the 2 others said, scratching their heads and adding an honorific. The crew looked at one another, puzzled. "Wait, we did something? Didn't you help put out the fire?" If you hadn't, I couldn't have fought without restraint, Chess replied seriously. His gentle, modest words hit Ina hard. She felt ashamed. I'm sorry, Mr. Rao. Chess, I even thought you might have been doing it on purpose. I really am sorry. So, friends from Black Griffin, you have to help cover the compensation. You can't make me pay alone, okay? Ina's cheeks brightened for a moment. Then she internally groaned. Damn. Give me back that image you just gave me. In a single sentence, the ideal of the powerful, handsome, irresistible S-class mage she'd built up in her head evaporated. Her mouth twitched and she half complained. But when Chess's relaxed expression suddenly turned solemn, she and the others straightened up. I still have important business to attend to. The rest of you stay on the ship, protect the others, and wait quietly for rescue from the Maritime Guard. They took him at his word, snapping to attention. Yes, Senior, they answered together. After the fierce fight, Chess had thoroughly won their admiration. Without saying more, Chess turned and prepared to take Clooney back for a face-to-face with Marshall. As he reached the ship's rail, he stopped, cast a deep look back at Ina and the others, and then spoke again. The two of them looked up, nervous. Is there anything else, Mr. Chess? Bouquet Lywin asked hesitantly. Chess smiled faintly. To be honest, I prefer you the way you were at the beginning. Before Ina and the others could react, he rode the curse dragon back to the damaged pirate ship. Hey, if you're not dead, make a sound. He kicked the motionless Clooney. Clooney stayed still, playing dead with the indifferent confidence of someone who knew he wouldn't actually be killed. If I'm not mistaken, the spatial magic you used earlier is an ancient lost magic, the 18 fighting god magic of Calamity and Demon, right? Clooney's eyes snapped open. You actually recognized it? I didn't think the Guildmaster of Deep Marsh Abyss knew such magic, Chess said. Did you get it from Marshall? From the battle, it was clear Clooney couldn't wield that magic proficiently enough to display its full strength. He was nowhere near Minerva's effortless mastery. At the mention of Marshall, Clooney's pupils constricted for a moment, then relaxed. I don't know any Marshall. Even if I did, I have nothing to say. Chess shrugged. I didn't expect an admission. The answer will come out soon enough. He wanted to know only whether Marshall was the true user of that lost magic. Clooney's guilty expression had already said enough. That was useful. Clooney realized he'd been exposed, abandoned his pretense, and a sinister smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. That man's origin is far beyond what you can imagine. You will die a terrible death. You can't stop it. You can't stop it. The old order will surely collapse. A brand new era of magicians, a world ruled by gods, will finally arrive. A world ruled by gods? Chess frowned, watching the fervent Clooney and thinking. The high commission fee, the large number of missing magicians, the resurging Dark Guild, the sudden appearance of the 18 fighting god magic of Calamity and Demon. Piecing together all the S-class details, a vast conspiracy began to take shape in his mind. Interesting. I didn't expect to stumble into something like this just by taking an S-class request for fun. Curiosity about Marshall's true aims flickered through him, but money came first. That was what the request was about. Chess knocked Clooney out with an elbow, tied a thick hemp rope around him, and hung him from the cursed dragon's claws. Under the crew's envious, longing gazes, the dragon blurred into an afterimage and vanished toward the horizon. Aslopa City, the abandoned lighthouse. Chess kicked open the rusted iron door. Request complete. Let's settle the bill, Mr. Marshall. Marshall sat on a wooden stool, staring blankly at Clooney, who lay on the floor like a dead dog. The man's pupils trembled with shock. He had clearly not expected this outcome. After a moment, the gloomy expression shifted to theatrical grief. He rose, staggered toward Chess, and feigned astonishment. Mr. Chess, you really did it. This is wonderful. Marshall bent and glanced at Clooney, his thin frame shaking. Tears leaked out and trailed down his cheeks. Finally. This scoundrel pirate who did all those wicked things has finally fallen into my hands. Chess clicked his tongue at the performance. No wonder Marshall could afford a huge commission fee. With acting like that, how could he not make money? After his show, Marshall wiped his face, raised his head, and looked around. Excuse me, where are the other pirates? He asked. They're all dead. Only this captain remains, Chess said. Chess watched Marshall warily. This man killed your wife and children, Mr. Marshall. You're not planning to renege on the payment, are you? No, you misunderstand. Marshall visibly relaxed when he heard there were no survivors. Good riddance. Those damned men deserved it. Mr. Chess, thank you so much for your help. I'm also fortunate you weren't harmed like other magicians have been. Chess had no patience for Marshall's bluster. He put out his hand. If you have no objections, pay up. I'm very busy. Ithak Chapter 26, Isle of the Hell Ruins. Hearing that, Marshall's face immediately tightened. He'd already been working with the pirates. How could he possibly have paid the commission fee in advance? Well, to be honest, all my commission fees are managed through the council. In that case, this person can't be handed over to you for now. Come with me. Chess stepped forward, putting himself between Marshall and Clooney. If they could get Clooney to the council and have him questioned, everything would come out. Chess trusted the council's methods. That was the main reason he hadn't exposed Marshall on the spot. He didn't want to get dragged into the affair. He could be the bystander and let the council do the work, so long as Marshall cooperated. You damned pirate, give me back my wife and children's lives, Marshall shouted. For a second, there was stunned silence. Then Marshall went dramatic. He pulled a dagger from his waist and lunged straight for Clooney's heart. Chess had been expecting something like this and reacted instantly, throwing a punch. Bang! Marshall and the knife went flying, slamming hard into the lighthouse's concrete wall. Chess frowned in puzzlement. According to Clooney's description, Marshall should be a magician versed in the 18 fighting gods' magic of calamity and demons, S-class, not unbeatable, but certainly capable of leaving a strong feedback when hit. Why had his blow felt empty? The answer became obvious when he looked at Marshall kneeling on the ground, white motes of light flickering across his form. This wasn't a true body at all, but a projection, a thought form. You've got a lot of tricks, Mr. Marshall, Chess said coldly. Marshall propped himself up with both hands, the scarred face twisted, eyes fixed on Chess. When did you find out? The other man's attack had been ruthlessly direct. A normal magician wouldn't strike a client like that. He must have been found out. Knowing this projection was only a decoy, Chess clapped once, sat down with Clooney safely behind him, and began to explain. When you suggested I go out to sea on that merchant ship, unless there's a problem with the client, I can't imagine any other reason why every magician who takes that commission would encounter pirates and vanish 100% of the time. That was a hypothesis until one of those idiots among the pirates let slip and mentioned fairy tale. Hearing that, killing intent flashed through Marshall's eyes. What a useless lot. He spat the words, then forced a smile. And you, out of all people, you surprised me. Even Clooney isn't a match for you. Yeah, fairy tale magicians aren't easy to handle, Chess replied. The stronger Chess proved to be, the more envious and frustrated Marshall became. If he could have captured Chess with his true body and siphoned his magic power, his plan would have been complete. Still, he had to maneuver. I've been too honest, Marshall said. I assume you'll answer my questions as well? Chess tapped a finger, listing them. For starters, what's the purpose of all this? Where are the missing magicians? And what do you mean by a new world ruled by gods? At the last question, Marshall's eyes grew even darker. He'd gladly have killed Clooney on the spot. He opened his mouth to refuse, then a sly idea crossed his mind. If Clooney were taken to the council, he would eventually be forced to reveal the whole plan, including the true body's location. Better to trap Chess and use his magic power to finish the work before the Guild Alliance got involved. Heh, since you ask so nicely. Enough. I don't have time for your rambling. Handing him over to the council fulfills my commission. Chess cut him off. Marshall's plan was seen through. Chess grabbed Clooney and started toward the lighthouse exit. Panic flickered across Marshall's face as he seized his chance to speak. I'm a descendant of the Demon. Capturing magicians lets me extract vast magic power and awaken the sky drum of the Demon, one of the 18 fighting gods. Descendant of the Demon. That explained Clooney's use of the 18 fighting gods' magic and suggested the sky drum was one of those gods' apparati. Chess's steps didn't falter, but his mind was registering the implications. The arrival of a fighting god would bring devastating disaster to Fior. As a member of a light guild, aren't you concerned? Chess almost laughed inwardly. That sounded like a problem for the royal family and the council, not his. All he wanted right now was to collect his commission and get back to the guild for one of Mira's Americanos. Then Marshall sneered. If you've got the guts, come stop me. I'll be waiting for you on Irmo Relic Island to the north, Chess Linadoga. Irmo Relic Island. Chess's expression changed, white with sudden dread. He recognized the name. The sun dipped lower, painting the sea orange. A warm breeze smoothed over the island, bringing a relaxed hush to the resort's busy edges. On the golden beach, in a temporary photo studio, a bright little scene was unfolding. Awesome! Mira as the demon and the black magician girl as the hero are amazing! The Magic Weekly editor exclaimed, grinning down at the newly developed proofs. This photo spread is perfect. It'll blow up in the next issue. The magazine's theme this month was the great adventure of the air demon and the hero on ancient Galuna Island, a publicity stunt for a tourist spot funded by the Fiore Kingdom. Mira and the black magician girl, having just finished their shoot, relaxed beneath a sun umbrella in their costumes. Hey Mira, do things like the demon fighting gods actually exist? The black magician girl asked, eyes wide. Mira rested her cheek in her hand, pondering, and smiled. They should, right? Like the dragons you met. They're a type of ancient creature. From the editor, they had learned more about the island they were standing on. 2 years earlier, what had been an uninhabited, windswept island off Fiore's coast was explored by a sea adventurer. Deep in the island's dense forest, he had uncovered the buried skeletons of ancient ear demon fighting gods. Word of the find reached investors. Basic facilities were added and themed attractions developed. Within a year, it had become a popular destination for travelers and thrill-seekers, its ruined splendor and unique ruins a viral draw. Even now, the adventurer's name, Marshall Whitedew, was carved into the plaque at the ruins entrance. Chapter 27. The evil demon appears and the crisis comes. Irmo Relic Island, inland from the beach. At the far edge of a clear, dense forest lay a basin filled with strange rocks. From above, the weathered stones spread out in a complicated pattern, oddly forming the outline of an ancient giant lying on its back. Tourists crowded the site, some standing on the stones to take pictures with their magic power cameras, others looking around with curiosity, and a few setting up easels to paint. On the surface, the place hummed with life. But beneath that bustle, a terrible crisis was brewing. Underneath the giant's skeletal outline, deep in the basin, oil lamps guttered along dark passages. The occasional drip of water echoed like a whisper of Irmo, setting teeth on edge. The passages had no external entrance. At their end lay a secret chamber, not very large. Black-robed figures had gathered in front of a stone platform carved with complex magical sigils. Their leader was short, a jagged scar cutting across half his face, making him look especially hideous in the dim light. He was the architect of the pirate incident, the man called Marshall. Master Marshall, do you really intend to awaken the Sky Drum early? A subordinate asked. The plan's been exposed. If we don't move now, it'll be too late. Marshall stared at the ancient platform, the heart of the Irmo's Sky Drum, his expression unreadable. With only the magic power those people can give, it won't reach an ideal, perfect state, he murmured. The subordinate pointed toward a dungeon carved into a corner of the chamber. Dozens of magicians were trapped inside a chaotic space, loners and full teams from various guilds, all wide-eyed with terror as they realized what was happening. We don't have time to be picky, Marshall said. Awaken it first. The rest will come to us. There were 3 conditions for the descent of the Sky Drum: the blood of an Irmo descendant, immense magic power, and human sacrifices. Blood awakened the Irmo's soul and will, magic power sustained its damaged body, and sacrifices allowed its true form to descend. The last step was crucial. Marshall had deliberately exposed the location of the Irmo relic to the Fiore Kingdom to attract enough sacrifices, to remake the world in the name of his god. We understand, Master Marshall, the followers replied. They moved with absolute obedience. Marshall produced a dagger, sliced his palm, and let the blood fall onto the heart-shaped stone platform. The sigils flared to life as if ignited. A crimson glow burst from the runes, lighting the dark chamber and racing down the passages like spilled fire. Those passages were the Irmo's blood vessels. The imprisoned magicians screamed as the platform drew in vast amounts of magic power, merging it with the red light. The stone pulsed, slow at first, then quicker and quicker, until it thundered with a sound like distant drums. Something ancient stirred, and a gloomy, feral aura crept into the air. On the island's surface, within the basin that formed the Irmo's head and had been turned into a tourist attraction, a soul-freezing red light suddenly bloomed from deep within the hollow eye socket. Before anyone could react, what had looked like a pile of rocks rose from the ground like a living skull, heaving up earth and stone with it. Boom! The island shook violently. Seabirds took wing. Land animals bolted. "What's happening?" Mira asked, turning from a conversation with the weekly editor. Her words caught in her throat when she saw a tide of terrified tourists running toward the shore, faces white with fear. A cloud of sand and dust filled the sky, and a hulking figure with fierce, glowing eyes had slowly risen to its feet. Its massive body loomed, blotting out the setting sun. "Mira, I feel magic power. An unusually strong magic power." Black Magician Girl's pupils narrowed as she stared at the awakened sky drum. "It's unlike anything I've felt. Ancient, profound. What exactly is that?" The first evacuees on the beach answered in panicked voices, pointing at the giant. "Irmo, the Demon 18 fighting gods have awakened. Run! I want to get on the ship. I want off this cursed island." A man scrambled toward the docked magic power ship, crawling in his haste. Mira's face tightened. She didn't wait for explanation. "Contact the council. Tell them to send support now," she shouted at the weekly editor, who'd gone pale. I understand," he stammered. "And you?" he asked, worried. "I'm not leaving," Mira said. "I have to stop that monster. I won't let it get near the magic power ship." She shrugged on her trench coat and set her jaw. Even without her powers, the justice inside her hadn't dimmed. Magicians must stand when danger came. Black Magician Girl instantly drew her magical battle robe and staff, taking a defensive stance. She and Myra had a bond beyond mere allies. To Black Magician Girl, Mira was like an older sister. She would not allow her to be hurt. "Okay," Mira nodded. They pushed against the flow of panicked people toward the giant. The closer they got, the worse the scene became. Collapsed walls, panicked tourists stumbling like headless chickens, some so frightened they'd wet themselves, and sat frozen on the ground with wide eyes as one of Skydrum's enormous feet descended. Skydrum stepped down, each footfall making the earth shudder and sending up pillars of dust. In the choking haze, pink streams of magical light flickered. Black Magician Girl perched on her staff, holding a frightened tourist who'd wet himself and carried him out of the stomping zone to a safer area. She was already turning back. Mira, on the ground, shouted direction after direction, guiding lost tourists toward evacuation points and the coast. Together, the two cleared the most dangerous zone, pulling trapped visitors to safety. "There are always fools who come looking for death," Marshall thought, his consciousness merged with Skydrum's ruined body. He'd seen Black Magician Girl darting through the air and wouldn't allow anyone to interfere with his harvest of sacrifices. With a thought, the giant black arm moved, reaching for her. The arm swung, compressing the air and whipping up a gale. Black Magician Girl flinched, shielding the rescued tourist behind her as magic power hummed into her staff. "Super magic power wave cannon," she cried. A dark pink beam lanced from the staff, racing through the air and striking the giant palm. Sparks showered as the energy crashed into the black flesh of the arm. Chapter 28, Black Magician Girl versus 18 Fighting Gods of Evil. It looks terrifying, but it's not that big of a deal. Black Magician Girl puffed out her chest and gave a peace sign to the little girl trembling in her arms, trying to sound reassuring. "Don't be scared, sweetie. Big Sister will take care of the monster in a bit." Before she could finish soothing her, a dark shadow fell over them. The giant palm of the Skydrum's remnant body reformed and slammed down with enormous force. Boom! The explosion echoed like thunder. Black Magician Girl was sent flying like a cannonball out of the ruined plaza and into the dense forest beyond, kicking up a cloud of dust. Black Magician Girl, Mira, shepherding the evacuees, cried out and dashed over through the sand and debris. "I'm fine, Mira," Black Magician Girl called back, brushing some leaves from her robe. "Compared to that fire lizard, this kind of attack isn't a threat." Pink light from her remaining magic power pushed smoke and dust aside, revealing her standing in a deep, cracked pit. Her golden hair fluttered in the wind. The trees, vegetation, even the ground around them had been mangled by the impact, but she and the little girl were unhurt. "Mira, I'll hold off that ugly brute. Get everyone out of here, now!" Handing the child to Mira, she grew serious. From the momentary contact, she'd felt a terrifying, dense, magic power within the opponent. This was not something that could be easily defeated, especially with her master not here. Chess's cards and card monsters could operate freely in this world only while supplied with magic power. Like celestial spirits, once the flow of magic power was interrupted, the card monsters would be pulled back into their deck. Black Magician Girl knew she had to delay the Sky Drum Remnant as long as possible to buy enough time for Mira to evacuate the tourists and for reinforcements to arrive. "Be extremely careful," Mira said, voice steady. She wasn't one to freeze in a crisis. She swung the little girl into her arms and ran for the beach where the magician boats were moored, the fastest way off the island. It was the best she, with no combat skill, could do to help. Black Magician Girl turned her glare on the lumbering remnant body. "Destroying an island is one thing," she muttered through clenched teeth, "but you ruined my time with Mira." She tightened both hands on her staff. "Big guy, prepare to be judged by a genius magician." A gust of air rose and lifted her flowing robe. Black Magician Girl bent her legs and streaked into the sky as a blur of pink light circling the massive, hulking remnant again and again. Each pass sent out a magical light wave that detonated on the remnant's surface. The Sky Drum Remnant used the magicians around it as an energy source and stitched destroyed areas back together, but its great, clumsy bulk could not catch the highly mobile magician. Several clumsy attempts to swat or grab her ended in failure. Inside that remnant, Marshall's body was fused into the Heartstone platform. Only his pale, ghastly face protruded. Seeing his efforts frustrated, his bloodshot eyes blazed with rage. This remnant had yet to absorb the sacrifices necessary to awaken the Sky Drum's true body. It had no access to true magic, only basic movement. It was less a body than a phantom woven of raw magic power, immune to ordinary damage. Marshall's plan had been simple: slaughter the tourists, use their lives to complete the conditions needed for the Sky Drum to fully manifest, and then eliminate any arriving chess or council magicians to harvest even more magic power, creating a perfect god on Earth. But the sudden appearance of this female magician had completely upended that scheme. If his offerings escaped, the council would eventually obliterate the remnant. Fortunately for him, Marshall had prepared contingencies. His pupils flickered. He looked around the dark-robed believers gathered in the chamber. They cheered, fanatical, eyes shining as they awaited the arrival of the Demon, 18 fighting gods, visions of sweeping the Light Guild and the Council, of achieving exaltation as followers of a new god. One of them, unable to contain his excitement, hurried to Marshall and asked about the progress. He was met with a cold, murderous stare. A moment later, there was only a sickening bang. The believer exploded into a mist of blood, his dream dissolving into the Heartstone platform. The others froze in horror. "No, no," someone screamed. "Lord Marshall, don't!" They were interrupted as their bodies rose and swelled and burst one by one into red mist. "Rest assured, friends," Marshall said emotionlessly as the room fell silent. "To give your lives for the coming of God is a noble thing." Outside, the giant monster howled to the sky and unleashed a storm of terrifying magic power. It shook off Black Magician Girl's attacks. The outer rock plates on its body flaked away to reveal layers of bone and muscle, black skin forming underneath like a beetle molting. Hair sprouted on its crown, crimson eyes opened, a fleshy nose drew coarse breaths, and a maw full of jagged teeth completed the transformation in moments. When the roar finally stopped, where the Sky Drum's clumsy silhouette had stood there, now loomed a humanoid giant in ragged ancient armor radiating raw menace. "So that's it, your true form?" Black Magician Girl muttered, tightening her grip on the staff. Demon 18 fighting gods, you're uglier than that fire lizard." Ilagudo, Ni, Weir, an obscure ancient incantation rumbled in reply. Marshall, still fused to the Heartstone, raised a finger. A tearing spatial vortex erupted that shredded the magic barrier Black Magician Girl had erected. Fragments of the barrier scattered through the air as she and her staff were hurled to a distant hillside in a violent blast. The hillside leveled where they struck. Marshall did not pursue. His huge eyes rotated and found Mira, who was directing tourists onto a boat at the coast. He almost smiled. He hadn't expected it. This white-haired woman carried astonishing latent magic power. Perfect. That saved him the trouble of waiting for Chess to arrive. The possessed air demon extended a giant palm and swept it through the air. A dark green vortex of chaotic energy fired off, twisting the space it passed through and lancing toward Mira at breakneck speed. Mira turned as if sensing something, and the vortex was already right on her, filling her field of vision with twisting darkness. At that instant, a pink figure shot in from the distance. Black Magician Girl planted herself in front of Mira and threw herself between the vortex and her. She gathered every scrap of her magic power to erect a light barrier and force back the invasion. The collision detonated into a shockwave that flattened the beaches on both sides and shook the magician boats moored at the shore. People on board had fainted with fright, collapsing and trembling. Mira stood pale, trembling, blood welling from her clenched fists. She wasn't afraid of the fighting god's magic itself. She was terrified by the sight of the magician before her. Under the barrage of the chaotic beam, the fabric of Black Magician Girl's robe began to splinter, and her body slowly turned transparent. Although Chess's card monsters never truly ceased to exist in any absolute sense, seeing one fade like that stirred a buried nightmare in Mira's heart, memories she had long refused to face. "Don't worry, Mira," Black Magician Girl whispered, straining against the wind and imploding barrier, forcing a smile. "I can feel Master!" Crack! The light circle shattered. The blast wave sent Black Magician Girl and Mira high into the sky, and then came the stomach-dropping plunge. Wind screamed in their ears, the world inverted around them. It looked like a certain death. Mira closed her eyes. On her face there was a strange calm, relief, not fear. She felt from the distant horizon a warm presence rushing toward them. There was no mistaking it, absolute reassurance. It was him. On the beach, the weekly magazine editor, still alive despite the chaos, stiffened and forced his eyes open after a long, dreadful moment. He saw first a dark blue cloak flapping in the hurricane, and then a tall figure standing on the ravaged shore, one arm around Black Magician Girl, the other holding Mira close. The two women were safe in that embrace. "Is that Mr. Chess?" the editor breathed, the tension finally snapping as relief flooded him. He couldn't help a loud cheer. "Cool. Chapter 29. Come on, big brother riding a flying dragon. Sorry I'm late." Chess let out a long breath. As soon as he learned Marshall's target was Irmo Relic Island, and sensing the special bond with Black Magician Girl, he'd summoned the newly acquired Citadel Wing Dragon and raced across the sea at full speed. The 4-star Citadel Wing Dragon was faster and less magic power hungry than the 5-star Curse Dragon, but the distance was enormous. Even he was exhausted. Still, he'd made it. "It's all right. If you hadn't had that connection with Master, I'd almost have thought you were just showing up to play the hero saving the damsel." Black Magician Girl teased, her earlier fear gone. With Master here, nothing could frighten her. Chess glanced down at her, clinging to his arm like a rag. She was covered in cuts, her aura scattered, and the magic power-woven robe she wore was badly torn. He didn't need to ask to know how fierce the fight had been. "You did well," he said softly, then looked up at the huge creature standing on the island. "Leave the rest to me." "Okay." Black Magician Girl squeezed her fist, then began to dissolve into pinpricks of starlight and drift back to the deck. "Chess, be careful." Mira looked worried. She didn't understand why Chess had appeared so suddenly, but she quickly filled him in. "That monster's one of the legendary demons, the 18 fighting gods. It can use lost magic that twists space." "I know. I rushed here to go after the mastermind behind this," Chess answered, voice low. "The mastermind?" "A man named Marshall. He claimed to be a descendant of Irmo." "Marshall? Isn't he the sea adventurer who found Galuna Island?" Mira's face went pale. She knew that name well. "So that's him. The old schemer really has many faces." Everything clicked into place for Chess. "We'll go into the details later. For now, we have to deal with what's in front of us." He turned toward Mira, seeing the confusion in her big eyes. "Mira, step back a little." Embarrassed, Miranda blushed and looked down at the way he was still holding her. "Shouldn't you put me down first?" "Ah, sorry. I was focused on Marshall and didn't notice. Chess scratched his head and set her down. Mira glared as if she believed him a ghost. Above them, Marshall, who had gone out of range a moment ago, reconnected. His scarlet eyes loomed down at Chess, full of murderous intent. His voice was a hoarse whisper that rolled over the island like a curse. "So you came from Azroba so fast, Chess. I have to admit, I'm a little surprised." Chess inhaled and let his magic power surge. From inside Skydrum, he felt a terrifying force that eclipsed even Dark Guildmaster Clooney. Marshall's expression turned savage. He raised Skydrum's massive hand and tore a dark green spatial vortex into being. Skydrum wasn't at peak physical state after earlier sacrifices, so Marshall wasn't rushing to strike Chess directly. Instead, he focused on the panicking tourists on the beach and the magic power boats full of fleeing people, a test and a way to wear Chess down. Chaotic light blossomed in the air like fireworks and fell at lethal speed toward the crowd. Chess's face hardened, and 2 cards flashed into his hands. In that instant, the roaring beams struck the desperate faces of everyone on the beach. Explosions rocked the shore. When the smoke cleared, the targeted people were unhurt. A small, fluffy ball floated peacefully in front of each of them. Those little guardians had taken the hits. Chess had used the monster card Kuriboh combined with the magic card Multiply. Marshall sneered. "You put on a calm face, but you're no different from those idiots in the Light Guild." He curled his lips, vicious. "If you've got the guts, try to stop me, Chess." A larger chaotic vortex gathered above him, more magic power, more danger. He intended to use innocent people as bait to sap Chess until the hero fell. Chess sighed. "I never liked battles with limits." He stepped forward, his aura sharpening. He'd originally meant to let the council handle this and finish his commission, but he couldn't stand by while civilians were slaughtered, even if every intervention would weaken his already strained magic power. He traced an arc with a card. Dazzling holy light struck above Skydrum. 3 colossal swords of light appeared and drove into the earth from different directions, pinning Marshall in place. The sacred light bound him, halting his assault. Movement restraining cards? Clever. No wonder Bruni lost to you, Marshall spat. But violent intent flared in his eyes. His fists churned the chaotic vortex faster. "You're naive if you think this toy will stop me. Right now, I am the ear demon 18 fighting god Skydrum." Under the rampaging spatial force, the holy sword strained and began to falter. Tremors rolled through Chess as pressure transmitted back through the light blades. He felt his bones creak. He gritted his teeth and drew another card. Trap card. Hexagram curse. Activate. Golden light outlined a hexagram around Skydrum's waist. With both magic and trap cards holding him, Skydrum's power was temporarily suppressed. Marshall's eyes went black. He roared and hurled more magic power into the bindings. Wind shrieked, lightning cracked, and the island and nearby sea shuddered. Dark clouds boiled overhead, and it felt as if Skydrum might break free at any moment. A violent hurricane slammed at Chess, driving him backward. His arms trembled from holding the cards. Blood welled where his skin cracked. The ground beneath his feet spiderwebbed with fissures. "Don't you dare take another step," Chess shouted through the storm. "I will protect the people on this island." His cry pushed the last group of tourists onto the magic power boat. Among them was the little girl Black Magician Girl had rescued. She broke free from her mother, sprinted to the rail, and yelled at the top of her lungs, "Go for it! Big brother riding the flying dragon!" Her shout spread courage through the others. The frightened passengers began cheering for Chess. He turned with effort, and seeing the little girl, managed a gentle smile. Someone nearby snapped, "What are you kids yelling about? Go home and mind your bottles." The startled mother pulled the girl back, but the child wasn't afraid. She stared wide-eyed at the tattoo on Chess's right arm, where a tiny dancing fairy was inked. The image lodged in her heart. The magic power engine array thrummed to life. The boat surged away across the sea and vanished into the horizon. At the same moment, the light swords and the hexagram array reached their breaking point. With a sharp crack, they shattered into a spray of luminous fragments. "You keep ruining my fun, Chess. I'll tear you to pieces," Marshall bellowed, stomping so hard the island shook. Chess wiped blood from his mouth and smiled faintly. "Can't help it. You just picked the wrong person to mess with. It's your bad luck you ran into the destroyer king of fairy tale. Unfazed, he raised his middle finger at Marshall. When it comes to destruction, I, your young master, am Fior's #1. Chapter 30, Rampage, Demon Mirajane. Unlucky? Marshall spread his arms and sneered. It seems you, as a card magician, haven't realized the seriousness of the problem. Using the Saint Light protective seal sword and 6-pointed star binding earlier, he'd confirmed Chess's identity as a card magician. That knowledge swelled his confidence to extremes, because the body he now occupied, the air demon 18 fighting god Sky Drum, a master of spatial magic, was the natural nemesis of spatial users like celestial spirit magicians and card magicians, Nier, Ela, Dorwergu, Radoka, Sprudo Cray. Skydrum intoned an ancient chant. A warped, chaotic green light stabbed into the sky and formed an enormous barrier that stretched across the island, sealing the space itself. In that domain, any spatial magic would be nullified, rendered useless. This was the crucial advantage of Marshall's true Skydrum body over the fake Clooney. He could wield forbidden, ancient magics that had never been seen in this world before. The space here is dominated by me, my dear Chess. Want to see if your broken cards still work? Marshall taunted, looking down at Chess on the beach with a contemptuous smile. Chess frowned and sank his consciousness deep into his deck. The monster cards and spell trap cards floated calmly. The familiar link to his magic power remained intact. He could still sense his deck and summon at any time. Duelist soul, he reminded himself. The bond between a duelist and their deck could not be severed so simply. Still, Chess didn't rush to use his cards. He stole a glance at Mira, who clutched her hands together and watched him with a face racked with worry. Maybe now was the moment he needed. After steadying himself, he drew a card in a practiced motion to summon, and his face fell. Damn it, I really can't use them. Mira's anxiety ratcheted up. Marshall's laughter crashed like thunder. I never thought the mighty fairy tale S-class magician would look so deliciously helpless. Ha ha! Since you've made me laugh, Chess, he added with a feral gleam in his eyes, after I capture you, I'll let you watch everything you love burn to ashes under the fist of the Demon. He didn't say more. He flexed, bent his legs, and launched himself across over 100 meters. His colossal foot slammed down where Chess stood. Sand and rock exploded outward, the ground heaved. Buried in the dust, Chess gripped Mira and darted through the debris. He didn't stay to exploit the opening this time. He pulled Mira back to a safer spot and set her down carefully. Mira, stay here, don't move. Don't worry, Chess said, forcing a smile despite the pain. Even if I can't use my cards, I still have fists that can tear the darkness apart. Mira was about to reply, but he was already turning away. Hey, Marshall, let me teach you a lesson. In the time it took to blink, Chess had appeared at the towering air demon's face. His speed shattered Marshall's preconceptions about card magicians and left the giant momentarily stunned. Fists are also a deadly weapon for card magicians, Chess shouted. Before Marshall could fully react, Chess's fist, dense with power and as heavy as a comet, crashed into his cheek. The blow sent Marshall's head snapping aside and launched his massive body crashing into a basin further in the island. Dust and boulders rained down. The shadow of Marshall's enormous form quickly dropped and nearly swallowed Chess as the Demon ripped itself free of debris. After possessing Skydrum, Marshall's speed had grown. He was no longer the cumbersome foe he had been against the Black Magician girl. Chess used the recoil from his punch to roll and avoid a fatal stomp, but Marshall twisted his bulk in a 360-degree motion and lashed out with a back kick as heavy as a battleship. Chess crossed his arms to block, but was still hurled through several hills. Marshall gave him no respite. Magic power coalesced in his massive palms, and a storm of spatial attacks detonated from the sky, lancing toward Chess's predicted landing. Explosions boomed across the island as Chess danced through columns of chaotic light with nimble footwork. Each step closed the distance to Marshall, while power roared into Chess's right fist. Marshall read his intention in an instant. He brought an arm to his side and gathered a countering force. As Chess vaulted high amid the fireworks, their two fists, tiny and human against enormous and demonic, met in midair. The collision unleashed a shockwave that tore through the surroundings. A human body, however resolute, could not stand up to the brute force of an ear demon fighting god. With no cards to augment him, Chess was flung backward, a swirling vortex opening behind him that dragged him away. Ha! Now I see why Clooney failed, Marshall observed, stalking toward the broken man who couldn't rise. A card magician with this kind of combat ability, you're a monster. He thought back in grim amusement. If he had been stuck in his human skin, he might never have stood a chance against Chess. But that was irrelevant now. Chess was practically a lamb for slaughter. A sick smile crawled across Marshall's face as he picked Chess up in one gargantuan hand. "Tell me," he purred, warming his palm, "how shall I torture you?" Marshall applied only a fraction of his strength, and Chess's bones screamed in protest. He coughed and whimpered. "No, don't." From a distance, Mira's pupils tore wide. Her body trembled. It felt as if her heart would shatter. If Chess died here, it wouldn't be like one of her card monsters disappearing. His life would be utterly erased, like her sister Lasana had been. Everything connected to him would be gone, including the card familiars she loved, like Black Magician Girl. Panic clawed at her consciousness. The suppressed magic inside her began to surge uncontrollably. Tendrils of dark purple smoke seeped out from her, and coils of power clouded the air. "Oh?" Marshall had noticed the violent, suppressed aura and turned his head toward Mira, who was clutching her temples. "I almost forgot," he snickered. "There's also you, a very tasty reservoir of magic." Sure of his victory and giddy with perverse thoughts, he strolled over, still holding Chess in his palm. He wanted Chess to see the woman he loved die. The shadow of despair closed over Mira. She rooted to the spot and watched helplessly. "Mira, run!" Chess spat through a mouthful of blood, forcing a weak grin. "Damn it, I wish one more cup of your coffee with sugar." Those fragile final words snapped the last string restraining Mira. Her scream tore into the sky. "Ah!" White hair whipped wildly around her as a storm of magic power detonated. Debris spun around her. It was as if a long sealed switch had been flipped. Black lightning arced and a dark purple magic circle bloomed above her head. Her clothes seemed to melt away and then recoalesced into a sinister black satanic armor. Dark lines streaked across her cheeks. A thick, powerful tail unfurled, and enormous pitch-black wings burst from her back. When the screaming ebbed and the energy settled, standing between Marshall and Chess was Fairy Tale's other S-class female magician, Demon Mirajane. The malevolent, surging power made Marshall's nostrils flare. Worse than the raw strength was the cold, contemptuous look etched on her face, the kind that made everyone else feel like trash. Marshall made a swift decision. His giant hand tightened. He meant to end Chess on the spot. But when he squeezed and waited for blood to splatter, nothing happened. The expected sight of Chess's life extinguishing in his palm did not appear. Disappeared? No, that can't be. Marshall's surprise cut off as he looked up and saw the white-haired woman who had been at his foot a moment ago now standing on a reef by the sea, 100 meters away, holding Chess in her arms. Her speed. How was that possible? Chapter 31, Demon Mirajane vs. Hellsdrum. Chess, this time it's my turn to protect you. After years away, Mira had once again taken on the Satan soul, and it showed. Her manner had hardened, becoming cool and decisive. Still, cradling Chess in a princess carry, she fought to suppress the restless urges of her demonic nature, keeping her voice gentle and soft. Chess, flushed, craned his neck to take in the endless mountainscape below and met Mira's nearby eyes. "I never doubted you," he said with a steady smile. Mira did not answer. She set him down carefully. When she turned back to face the distant sky drum, the tenderness in her dark eyes vanished, replaced by a terrible, concentrated fury. "I will kill you," she said coldly. Marshall's brow rose at that audacity, and a monstrous killing intent flared in his gaze. Now in the body of the Air Demon 18 fighting gods, he was a god poised to dominate the world. He would not tolerate being stared down like this, especially by a woman who'd been helpless moments before. "Ignorant, arrogant woman, die!" he roared. Thick, dark green vortices coalesced behind his massive form. The surrounding space twisted and fractured, and beams of light laced with terrifying power shot toward Mira. Mira cocked her head, her long white hair whipping in the wind. Calmly, she extended her demonic right arm, spreading black lightning across her fingertips. A dark purple magic circle pulsed into being, saturated with the power of the Satan soul. Countless pitch-black palms, each dripping with demonic aura, reached out from the circle to seize the spatial light beams pouring down from the sky. Dark stream. Where the two forces met, the air detonated. Explosions rippled along the coastline as light and shadow collided. A black flash darted through the maelstrom and appeared directly before Marshall. Mira had leapt to the Sky Drum's chest, hands clasped as magic power converged into blinding lightning. Super flash! The close-range strike caught Marshall off guard. The current punched into his bones, his face contorting with pain. He planted a massive foot and braced himself, forcing his magic power to surge and shove Mira back. Her demon wings fanned out, stabilizing her. She clenched her fists and formed two spheres of absolute black magic. Foolish woman, don't be so arrogant. Marshall's rage turned feral. He swung a fist shrouded in spatial vortices. The winds of their blows howled. Compressed to their extremes, they traded hundreds of blows in seconds, violent, relentless blows. With every exchange, Marshall grew more astonished. Under Mira's fierce assault, his great body was suppressed, denied any opening to strike back. How could this woman, who could have been crushed a moment ago, fight like this? It made no sense. Abandoning his head-on assault, Marshall raised a palm and cast a spatial spell. A chaotic green vortex dragged at Mira, tearing open an alternate dimension around her and halting her movements. Seizing the moment, he roared and unleashed a torrent of spatial energy. Mira tore through the rift with her magic power, only to be hit squarely by the spatial wave. The force flung her like a cannonball, and she slammed into the sea far below. A towering spray rose and fell, then the waves smoothed again. At a glance, it seemed she'd been driven back. Marshall sneered, convinced he'd won. Trying to contest a fighting god with mere human strength. Ridiculous. But his triumph dissolved as the currents below him began to churn with increasing speed. At the center of the roiling water, Mira spread her arms and drew on her power, using the sea itself to form a spectacular, rotating vortex, an oceanic weapon more massive than Marshall's own body. He narrowed his eyes and formed a spatial wall with a strange hand sign. The wall took the brunt of the onslaught and shattered the vortex, but the attack's energy had been expended into rain, and a fine mist obscured his vision. Through the haze, a deep black light flickered and gathered. The surface impact had been only a feint. Mira's true aim had been something far deadlier. Suspended in the air, Mira's gaze sharpened. She brought her demon hands to her waist and drew a giant black magic circle into being. The circle contracted and vanished between her palms, condensing into a high-density sphere of magic power that thrummed with annihilation. Black lightning crackled, stirring hurricanes that tore at the air. "How dare you hurt Chess? Hurt my companion," she murmured, voice low and venomous. "Especially someone like you, there can be no forgiveness." Without hesitation, she thrust her arms forward. "Soul Annihilator!" The compressed black beam ripped through space and struck Marshall's massive form. The impact detonated into a void of darkness, swallowing more than half the island in a ravenous black hole. Black light shot into the sky like a blight. Even the distant occupants of the magic airship felt the sickening dread. The uproar lasted nearly a minute. When the world stilled and the smoke cleared, the Sky Drum's body lay shredded, its flesh and bone dissolving like foam. At the heart of it all, Marshall's face peered out from where his chest once was, panic etched across it as purple smoke coiled around him. Mira descended slowly and walked to Chess's side. Her demonic mask had fallen away. She had returned to her gentle, familiar appearance. Her magic power bar, her weakness, had been severely taxed. Unsealed after so many years, the strain on body and spirit was immense. She had clearly reached her limit. That was why she could not take on a stronger demonic form. Her chest heaved. She panted hard as she watched the remnants of the Sky Drum dissolve. Just as relief began to wash over her, a blazing scarlet light burst before her eyes. It was followed by an oppressive demon aura that crushed down on her. Mira's pupils tightened. Shock and alarm flared across her face. Chapter 32, Final Battle. I failed? No, impossible. The descent of a god, a new era for magicians. No one can stop it. No one. It will not be stopped. Oh, Sky Drum, take it. My body, my will, my soul, take it all. Marshall, fused to the body of Sky Drum, looked madder than ever. His eyes were bulging with bloodshot veins. Amid the mournful, frantic screams of his followers, his head suddenly shattered, bursting into a spray of blood. Cruel to others and to himself, he had sacrificed his own life to Skydrum to make up for the magic power the creature lacked. A vast, bloody magic circle tore open the air and hung over Skydrum, pouring an ancient, chilling aura into the beast. Bathed in that power, Skydrum's damaged form knit itself back together and grew even more solid than before. Deep within the chaotic space, a pair of crimson cyclopean eyes, like those of a demon king from the abyss, slowly opened. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion, and yet in an instant. Not good. Mira's muscles tensed all over. Sensing that something had gone seriously wrong, she stepped forward instinctively, preparing to take the Satan soul back into herself. The backlash from her depleted magic hit her hard. She cried out and nearly collapsed. Skydrum turned those blood-red eyes, sweeping a contemptuous gaze over Mira, and then settling on Chess, who crouched behind her. Heh, truly a lowly, laughable insect. Even now, you need a woman to shield you. Skydrum's speech still carried traces of Marshall's will. This body is far from perfect. Are there not enough sacrifices? Stupid human descendants, you claim my power, and yet you cannot even accomplish this trivial thing. Skydrum muttered and lifted a huge hand toward Mira and Chess. A deeper, more chaotic vortex condensed at its palm and hurtled forward. Boom! A pillar of destructive energy slammed down toward Mira. She braced for the worst, despair flattening her features. But when the smoke cleared, she was standing there, unhurt, stunned. Looking up, she saw a warrior with a massive shield rise out of the searing light and then dissolve into motes of light. 4-star monster card. Extremely high defensive capabilities. That was Giant Shield Guardian? Mira's eyes widened in surprise. Skydrum, carrying Marshall's memories, stiffened with confusion. The island's card space had been sealed. How could a card summon appear? Before it could puzzle the matter out, a dark blue cloak fluttered and Chess spoke. Whether you're Marshall or Skydrum now, here's what I want to say. Chess walked slowly past Mira, facing Skydrum. Mira is strong. Being protected by her is no shame. If she hadn't bought us time, I wouldn't have been able to reconnect with the cards, he added, choosing a straightforward, believable explanation. You claim you broke my spatial seal? A mere human. Impossible, Skydrum bellowed in blind, furious confidence. Times change, Lord Skydrum. Don't underestimate the bond between me and my deck, Chess replied. Bond? Skydrum sneered. You're nothing but a flickering candle. You can be snuffed by a single blow. Skydrum laughed heartily, and judging by the exhausted state Chess showed, assumed the human was finished. It was a reasonable assessment. Chess had just fought the Dark Guild, rushed here across the sea, and used protective spells that drained him dry. But Chess had a plan. Well then, do you want to try? Chess crossed his arms and met Skydrum's glare with a smile that said, Come at me. Skydrum hesitated. It sensed a trick. Through Marshall's memories, it knew card magicians to be cunning. Back down now, and its rivals would mock it for fear. With that thought fueling its rage, Skydrum snarled, You who put on a show, I will grant your wish. Rather than strike outright, Skydrum tested with a ranged assault, a chaotic beam that ripped the earth as it flew. In that instant, Chess flicked his hand and flipped over a preset trap card at his feet. Stamina Enhancer, Super Z. Stamina Enhancer, trap card. When it would receive fatal damage, it restores the user's maximum magic power. Long activation chant required, triggers only when attacked. After use, it needs time to recharge. Chess had prepared this while Demon Mira was keeping Skydrum busy. A surge of abundant magic filled him, restoring him to full power. With one punch, he shattered the chaotic beam. How is this possible? Skydrum's eyes bulged. It had expected to finish them, not see its attack dissipated. Mira, you should be able to do it now, right? To receive a new demonic power? Chess glanced at her. Mira thought back to the plans they had discussed and nodded, determination firm in her face. Chess, yes, absolutely, she said. Chess smiled. Then follow my will. Desummoning of the demon. Black clouds roiled overhead and a terrible bolt of lightning split the sky, striking down to form a towering figure before Chess, a gray-white exoskeleton, dark red sinew, barbed demon horns, and dark blue wings unfolding. Two terrible, glowing eyes stared out of the monster. Summoning of the Demon, 6-star monster card. wields dark power far beyond monsters of similar rank, demon type. The summoned demon met Mira's gaze and inclined its head as if it understood. "Please lend me your strength, summoning of the demon," Mira whispered, placing her hand on the creature's forehead and beginning the takeover magic. Because the monster had been summoned by Chess, the process flowed smoothly. When the takeover light cleared, Mira stood reborn in white demonic armor. Demon, summoning of the demon, Mira Jane had appeared. "You bastard! Are you really a card mage?" Skydrum raged, watching the transformation. It had sent attacks that had revitalized those two candles. It was losing control. Chess raised his right arm and flicked a card between his fingers. A blinding white flash produced 5 allies on the field: a rock giant soldier, a cursed dragon, an elf swordsman, a dark knight, and, stepping out of a black magic circle, the robed figure everyone feared, the 7-star black magician. If it were Natsu, he'd be yelling that line right now, wouldn't he? Chess grinned at Mira, the absurdity easing the tension. Mira grinned back, the corners of her mouth lifting into a confident smile. After a heartbeat, the two of them shouted in unison, "I'm fired up!" Skydrum, enraged beyond measure after ages of solitude, unleashed a howl. "Damned humans, turn to dust beneath my magic." Boom! The spells collided. The searing, exploding light of their magic engulfed the entire island. Chapter 33. Let the stagnant time start to move. Night fell, and the sky filled with stars. Moonlight spilled across the sea, scattering ripples of silver. Waves washed the shore with a comforting hush that followed the battle. The once bustling tourist island was scarred and shattered. The center lay wrecked, hollowed into a deep pit crisscrossed with fractures. At the bottom, the air demon 18 fighting gods Skydrum lay inert, its life force extinguished. Chess and Mira had won. Faint electric arcs winked, and the white demon armor clinging to Mira dissolved in the sea breeze, restoring her to her usual form. But her expression was dark, solemn. There was none of the triumph one would expect after such a victory. Scuffed and pale-footed, she walked slowly across the sand toward Chess. He noticed something off and opened his mouth to speak, but Mira reached him first. She pressed a hand to his shoulder and gently shoved. Chess was spent from the fight. Just standing had been an effort. He went down where he stood, unable to resist. His vision swam until it steadied on the bright, star-studded sky. Then strands of soft white hair fell into his view, and Mira's fair face filled his sight. She sat directly on him, hands bracing on either side of his head, her body trembling slightly. "What's wrong, Mira?" Chess asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Her long hair veiled her features. "Chess, tell me the truth. Could you use card magic from the very beginning?" she asked sharply. Chess was taken aback, then nodded. "Yes, I could. I thought if you could face the power you have, you'd use it to protect our friends." Mira's face twisted. "No, no, no. Demon, power, none of that matters," she cried. Cold tears splashed across Chess's cheek. Up close, he could see she was sobbing. "Please, Chess, don't ever do such dangerous things again," she pleaded, voice breaking. She wasn't accusing him of deception or blaming him for forcing her to unleash her demon power. She was terrified, thinking of what might have happened if she'd been too late. The image of Chess held in that hand had shaken her to the core. Chess froze as a realization hit him. As a transmigrator who knew the plot, he had assumed that at such a critical moment, Mira would successfully use Takeover and save him. And if anything unexpected occurred, there was always Revive the Dead as a safety net. He had been fearless. He had failed to appreciate Mira's fear, the burden of wondering if she could mobilize her power, whether Takeover might fail, whether comrades would die. Those were terrifying unknowns. He had overlooked the pressure she bore. "I'm sorry, Mira. I was reckless. I made you worry," he whispered. At that, Mira finally broke down, burying her face against his chest and crying freely. After she had cried herself out, Chess summoned the Citadel Winged Dragon, and they left the ruined island for the nearest port city, Harugion. Mira was quiet the whole flight, staring up at the star-strewn sky. Only when the lighthouse on the coastline came into view did she speak in a small voice. "Chess, do you think that brightest star could be Lysana?" she asked. The mention of Takeover had dredged up thoughts of her sister Lysana, long gone from Mira's life, and tears stood in her eyes. "No," Chess said. Lysana's fate had already taken place before Chess transmigrated, so he'd never really known her. He didn't want to give Mira false hope. He watched as Mira's shoulders slumped and she pressed her forehead into his chest. "Stars are used for the dead," she murmured. "But maybe Lysana is alive somewhere. Some other world?" Ches lay back on the dragon's scales, hands clasped behind his head. He'd heard the rumor too. The guildmaster had said Lysana had turned into a beam of light and vanished from Mira's arms. "That doesn't sound like a normal death," Mira added. She and Elfman had scoured the forest where the accident supposedly happened and found nothing. No body, no trace. Ches had no intention of telling her about Aeolus, not because he didn't trust Mira, but because the truth was too bizarre to explain, and revealing it would push Mira and Elfman to risk everything to go after Lysana, to go to Aeolus itself. That was something he couldn't risk right now. "But even if Lysana is alive," Ches said quietly, looking up at the stars, "she wouldn't want you and Elfman living forever in guilt. You have to let go of the pain. Let the stagnant time start to move again. Like you did today, using the Satan soul to save me," Mira said, lowering her head. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and offered a small, wry complaint. "You really like doing unnecessary things, Ches." "But thank you," she added, and for the first time since the battle her smile held a little more life. "We're comrades," Ches replied. "Saying things like that sounds too formal." He sat up, fixing Mira with a serious look. "By the way, can you use takeover anytime now?" "Should be able to," she stammered, meeting his intense gaze and sensing where this was going. "Then when we get back to the guild, we'll spar," Ches said, grinning. "You're the only S-class I haven't fought yet." Mira's mouth twitched despite herself. She reached up and punched him lightly on the forehead. "Baka Ches?" Irmo Relic Island. The slowly rotating magic circle drove back the darkness along the coastline. 3 magic battleships lay moored at the shore, the flags of the Council and the Guild Alliance snapping in the sea breeze. The Council had immediately classified the awakening of the Demon 18 fighting gods as a major incident and organized a subjugation force to deal with it. Because it had taken time to mobilize, the unit only arrived now. What in the world? The subjugation force froze at the sight of the island, battle-scarred ground, shattered corpses of the demons. They had expected a desperate fight, or even a sacrificial last stand. Instead, they found the aftermath of total annihilation, and shock fought with relief on every face. Shock, because evacuees had said a fairy tale mage named Ches had fought the demons and actually managed to wipe out those ancient fighting gods. Relief, because they had been spared a nightmarish battle. "Everyone, stay alert. Secure the battlefield, inspect the demon corpses, and sweep the island for survivors," the captain ordered, forcing his voice steady. Once the force began its work, the captain summoned his adjutant. "You said one of the evacuated tourists awakened magic that resembled an demon fighting gods. What's that about?" "It was a little girl," the adjutant answered. "We don't know exactly how she awakened. It looks like innate talent. She comprehended the magic after seeing the demon's power." "Is her background clean? Could this be some remnant method left by the demons?" "There shouldn't be," the adjutant said seriously. "She's the daughter of the newly appointed regular guildmaster of Sabretooth. Her name is Minerva Orlando." Meanwhile, Ches and Mira had reached Harugion. They cut through the half-finished port and walked into the town's center. It was late. The last train to Magnolia had long gone, and both were exhausted after the battle. They decided to find a hotel, planning to report the demon incident to the guildmaster in the morning. With such a commotion, the council would investigate thoroughly anyway. Whether the revival of the demon 18 fighting gods had spread through town or Harugion's nights were always empty, the streets were unusually deserted. Even some normally late-night taverns had closed early. After searching, they finally found a hotel with its sign still lit. The owner, a middle-aged man with a slightly greasy smile, greeted them immediately. "I'm afraid we're full," he apologized. "I was just about to take down the sign." Mira frowned. "Hotels in Harugion rarely fill up, don't they?" "Oh, have you two not heard?" the man sighed. "Something big happened on nearby Galuna Island. A lot of fleeing tourists flooded into Harugion. Most places are the same." So that was why, Mira thought. Ches, who mostly wanted a hot bath and a bed, slid a wad of cash across the counter. "Could you make an exception?" he asked. The amount, several times the normal rate, made the owner's eyes light up. All right, the man said, forcing a hospitable air while greedily pocketing the money. I'll free up a room we had reserved for a distinguished guest. Led by the owner, Chess and Mira checked in. The room wasn't huge, but had a private bathroom, a TV cabinet, and a balcony overlooking the sea. Mira, practical and unbothered by sharing, tidied up and headed for the bath. Ches leaned on the balcony, blocking out the sound of running water, and idly drew a new magic card into the air with a flick of his hand. Magic card. Can secretly control and alter the target's consciousness. The lower the target's magic power and the weaker their spirit, the higher the chance of success. A mind control card, Chess muttered. Not bad. He slipped it into his deck. With brainwashing in hand, dealing with unexpected threats like the air demons, those not in the original world template, would be easier. Brainwashing pirate crews, or even a dark guild master like Clooney, if necessary. Getting 2 new cards in one day had also raised Chess's magic power limit by a few points, a small, welcome bonus. The water stopped running, and the bathroom door opened. Mira stepped out wrapped in a towel, droplets clinging to her skin, long white hair falling over her shoulders. Her usual upward cowlick had relaxed into front bangs, giving her a slightly different, softer look. Chess stared for a moment, not because he was leering, but because he hadn't seen Mira like this before. Chess, your turn, she said with a gentle smile. The composure dropped the moment Chess blinked and nodded. She sat on the edge of the bed, cheeks flushed and heart racing, but forced herself calm. Chess, being generous like that, took the only corner on the floor, while Mira used the bed. After years of sleeping in forests and on request jobs, the floor felt like a luxury to him. They said goodnight and turned off the lights. In the dark, Mira replayed the day over and over. The photo shoot, the air demon's appearance, Chess arriving like a savior, her using takeover magic, the reversal when she seized the demon's summon and fought beside Chess. Those few hours had felt like a week. Most important, she felt like she had finally stepped out of the shadows of her past and could think of Lysana without panic. Something the guildmaster and others had tried to reassure her about before, but this felt different. Maybe it was because of Chess. Afraid to be too forward, Mira poked her head out from under the covers, took a breath, and whispered, "Chess, why don't you come up here?" Her soft voice hung in the darkness, and nothing happened. Chess had slept as soon as his head hit the floor. He hadn't heard her. Mira sighed, a mix of disappointment and affection, then quietly got up, fetched a blanket, and draped it over him. Chapter 35. How S-Class Wizards Really Get Along. Somewhere in the forest by a lake stood a green crystal building of unusual design, the Fiora Kingdom Council headquarters. Its interior was even stranger. Several giant rock golem hands formed the structure, and on each outstretched palm stood a council member. From the returning investigation team, they had learned the broad outline of what had happened on Ermo Relic Island. I never thought Fairy Tale, usually a brimstone and ruin kind of guild, would do something like this, one counselor muttered. Heh, never mind the motive. They completely wrecked the tourist island the kingdom had invested in. Better to wreck a tourist island than let citizens be slaughtered and the danger spread, another replied. The on-site team reports that if the air demon 18 fighting gods had been restored to full strength, we wouldn't be worrying about one island. We'd be worrying about the safety of the entire kingdom. Still, Chess and Mirajane did us a favor this time, someone conceded. So what about the Kiltina continent incident? Do we keep pressing Fairy Tale? One voice asked. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to the man on the central platform, a dignified figure with 2 large goat-like beards. Counselor Crawford's ancient book floated beside him. He studied it for a moment, then spoke in measured tones. It seems they aren't entirely useless. Set that agenda aside. The resolution from yesterday is voided. Call Makarov tomorrow, Crawford added. I want a full report on what happened on Ermo Relic Island. The previous resolution had been harsh. If Fairy Tale caused any further trouble, they were to be disbanded. Now, with Crawford's decision, the rest of the council, many of whom had long held grudges against Fairy Tale, fell silent and nodded. Counselor Seagrain's eyes flickered as he thought to himself, Chess Lin Idoga, interesting fellow. I wonder whether this change will be good or bad for you. Urza. Standing on a palm a few seats away was a man with short light blue hair and a red mark over his right eye, Jalal Fernandez's thought projection quietly embedded among the council members. Early the next morning, Makarov received the summons and climbed aboard a mana-powered carriage bound for the council's Magnolia branch with a heavy heart. He had not yet heard any news from Galuna Island. He assumed the council wanted him to answer for the town that had been destroyed. He dressed his solemnness like armor. No sooner had he left than the morning newspapers flooded Magnolia. The big scoop was the Irmo Relic Island incident. The kingdom's collaborative Hero and Demon series was scrapped overnight. Magic Weekly, the only press that had been on site and had photos, rewrote and redesigned everything to run the full story immediately. The front page featured Chess, single-handedly holding back the massive Demon Guardian Mage ship with his rock golem, an image impossible to ignore. In the southwest corner of Magnolia, in the largest tavern, a young man slammed the crumpled paper down and shouted, "Hey, did you see this? That Chess from Fairy Tale actually saved all the tourists on the island." The man wore the black chickenfoot emblem on his sleeve, the symbol of Black Griffin, and he looked genuinely shocked. He'd been ambushed by Chess's rock golem before and had been nursing a grudge. He'd been prowling Magnolia, trying to find Chess and get even, but now the news had arrived before he could act. "Yeah, I saw it," someone answered blandly from a table. Around the room, the owner and servers reacted with casual calm. "You from out of town, aren't you?" the owner asked the Black Griffin Mage, serving him a mug of beer. "You lot always act surprised when you see Chess do something good." He set the barrel on the counter and began to tell a story, rocking the mug as he spoke. Last year, some alcohol-loving monsters in the outskirts went berserk and came to steal from us. Chess showed up, sorted them out, and chased them off before the army could get here. The young mage blinked. "But the battle destroyed half your place." The owner smiled wryly and nodded toward a corner where a small boy had just barreled into his arms, calling, "Dad!" The owner stroked the child's hair with gratitude. "That kid survived the monsters because Chess was there. A little structural damage is, well, it's a small price." "With Chess around," the owner said, "the safest moments feel dangerous, and the most dangerous moments somehow end up being the safest." A guest at another table cackled, "So remember, don't get involved, keep your distance." Everyone laughed, but their eyes were warm rather than cruel. The Black Griffin Mage frowned, unsettled by the friendly tolerance beneath the barbs. Then the whole tavern felt the tremor. Rumble. The laughter froze. The patrons recognized the sound too well. "That bastard Chess? He's using his rock golem to move through the city again, isn't he?" Someone groaned. "Couldn't he be a little more discreet?" A woman grumbled. "I'm done with this. Let's go outside and yell at him." "Yeah, I've been saving some new insults. This time I'll really chew him out." They spilled into the street, shouting at the passing rock golem. From the doorway, the Black Griffin Mage finally saw it. The faces that had been shouting looked torn between annoyance and affection. The curses were delivered with broad, smiling grins, people genuinely happy and reassured to see Chess rumbling by, even if his golem made a mess of the road. So that was the dynamic between an S-class mage from Fairy Tale and this town. The Black Griffin Mage sighed, set his mug down, and took a long swallow. He had expected to confront Chess and prove himself. Instead, he put the newspaper in his pocket, lowered his head, and slipped away down the street. He didn't try to stop the golem this time. The city's relationship with Chess was messy and loud, but it was theirs. A faint blue glow lingered at the guild entrance where a magic circle had been. Chess, Mira, and Black Magician Girl stepped down from the shoulders of the rock golem, which dissolved into drifting motes of light. "The people of Magnolia are as enthusiastic as ever. What can I do?" Chess sighed and glanced at Mira, who wore a wine-red dress and smiled. "Mira, feel that? This is what you get when you go on missions with me." Mira looked back at the noisy street, her gentle smile undisturbed. "It's a little too enthusiastic, though." As Fairy Tale's face and a beloved Magic Weekly cover star, this was Mira's first time being the focus of Chess-style adoration. It was flattering and a bit embarrassing. She wasn't used to it. So unfair. Between us, Mira, my popularity in Magnolia is still less than Master's. Black Magician Girl pouted. Even with both girls by his side, every cheering voice along the way had been for Chess. The card monster, still recovering from a major battle, should have returned to the deck to rest, but Chess had used a lot of magic to let her slip out so she could come back to Magnolia and complete a photo shoot with Mira. Maybe it's because the rock golem was so big. People just saw Chess on its shoulders and assumed it was only him. Mira propped her chin on her hand thoughtfully. It wasn't a forced consolation. If anything, it was honest. Her own popularity in Magnolia was no small thing. The two girls exchanged a look and nodded in agreement. Right, that had to be it. Before Chess could finish, the guild's newly repaired door was flung open. Members who had heard the commotion flooded outside, faces alight. "Oh, Chess is back!" shouted someone. "We read about it in the paper. It was awesome," cheered another. Scaring off tourists and fighting a legendary monster single-handedly, only Chess could do that. Natsu crowed from the front. Behind him, Lucy's snark was predictably on point. No, actually, I think Mr. Chess is the legendary monster." Lucy remembered the bright red headline and the dramatic illustration in the paper and couldn't help picturing herself with arms outstretched, a torn cape behind her, shielding the town. "This world shall be protected by me, Queen Lucy," she imagined, completely taken with her own dramatic vision. "Hey, Lucy, normally you'd be the first one sent flying in this kind of situation." Happy teased, his voice like a razor. "How heartless. Couldn't even let me dream," Lucy said, stunned and deflated. As more friends crowded around cheering and congratulating, Chess flushed. Aha! You all found out already?" "Magic Weekly's fast," someone said. Mira noticed a copy of the paper in Macau's hands. "Darn it. I knew I shouldn't have taken the book destruction request. I should have grabbed Chess's request instead," Natsu yelled indignantly. Lucy thought, "You just wanted to fight the Ur-Demon 18 fighting gods, didn't you? And Chess's request was S rank. S rank. To let my sister fall into such danger. Boo-hoo, I'm a failure of a man," Elfman cried, melodramatic as ever. Lucy glared, total sister complex. "It's really a shame. Protecting tourists should be a job for a handsome guy like me," Loki said, pushing up his reflective glasses. Lucy rolled her eyes. "You just want to go on a date with Mira and Black Magician Girl, don't you?" Catching Lucy's disdainful look, Loki jumped. "What? Lucy, you're here?" He who had been acting so cool suddenly shrank away. Having been exiled from the Star Spirit world, Loki feared being around a Star Spirit mage. "Think, Lucy, Chess took an S-rank request," Gray said, stepping forward, black leggings gleaming in the sunlight. His clothes, as usual, looked like they'd run away from home again. "You got a problem, you ice block?" Natsu snapped back, flames flaring around his right fist as he glared provocatively across the doorway. "Anyone who gets scared at the mention of an S-rank job isn't worth my time." Ha! One jeer was all it took. Tempers flared and the guild members started rolling up their sleeves, brawling and shouting right at the entrance. Chess, who knew the strength of his friends well, simply smiled and walked into the quieter guild hall, weaving past the crowd. He had an important report to make to the master about the events on Irmo Relic Island. Mira and Black Magician Girl accompanied him, with a cautious Lucy bringing up the rear. With most of the others still fighting outside, the main hall was pleasantly calm, only a few people scattered about. "Yo, Chess, you guys back?" Kana called from among them. Since borrowing the Book of Secret Arts from Chess, she'd stopped drinking herself into oblivion and had been studying diligently. She now held a quill and looked far more composed, though still herself, legs crossed on the wine table in a comfortably casual pose. Her air felt steadier than before. "Kana, how are you feeling?" Chess asked, smiling. "Good, really good. I finally feel hopeful," she replied, setting down her quill and leaning back, eyes bright. "I heard about Galuna Island. You were incredible." Her refined posture collapsed in an instant. "Not just Master. Mira and I played a crucial role too," Black Magician Girl chimed, flashing a playful peace sign. Without the time they bought, the Sky Drum, having absorbed countless sacrifices, might have reached its full, terrifying strength before Chess could act. "Haha, that's true," Kana said without hesitation. Although Black Magician Girl was a card monster created by Chess's magic, she and Kana had talked about many aspects of magic. The girl's unconventional insights had surprised Kana and sparked new ideas. Lucy, who still saw herself as a rookie, muttered to herself, "Black magician girl is amazing. She looks even younger than me. I've got to get stronger." Chess caught her quiet self-encouragement and turned to her. "By the way, Lucy, Natsu and Happy took a job earlier. I'm guessing they roped you into teaming up. How'd it go?" Chapter 37, S-Rank Conflict, Chase versus Laxus. Lucy sighed and looked troubled. Because they hadn't completed the destroy the books part of the job, she and Natsu hadn't received a single coin. "Yes, chess, even though we didn't get paid and I ran into a few weird guys chanting lullaby on the way back, I found a really amazing novel and got the Golden Zodiac key." The frustration vanished from her face in an instant and was replaced by a radiant smile. "All in all, it was a great request. You ran into strange guys? That's what you get for teaming up with Natsu and Happy," Chess said, nodding seriously. He glanced at Lucy. Lullaby. It's a kind of flute that can harvest souls when it's played. Its true form is a demon from Zeref's book. I feel like you make so much sense, Chess." Lucy, who'd been duped before, threw up both hands in earnest agreement. Seeing her respectful look, Chess smiled and waved it off. "We're all guild members. You don't need to be so formal with me. Call me brother, like Natsu and Gray do," he added lightly. "I'm a few years older than you." Lucy blinked at the sudden informality and then, after a second, bowed her head with mock solemnity. "Yes, brother Ches," she muttered to herself under her breath. Although Natsu and Gray just call him by his name. "You know, brother Ches is really strong. He can even beat those giant ancient monsters," Lucy gushed, eyes shining. "Are you excited by battles like Natsu and Gray are?" "If you're so thrilled by fighting, Lucy, I'll take you along next time there's a request like that," Chess said calmly. "No, I'm not excited at all," Lucy protested, horrified. "Brother Chess, please, absolutely do not take me along." The thought of fighting a monster big enough to shake an island by stomping terrified her. She definitely didn't have enough lives to spare. Before she could finish, Natsu, fresh from his daily sparring, popped up behind her. "I'm fired up. Hey, Lucy, let's take on an S-class request next time for fun." Lucy turned to him, fuming. "Fired up my foot. Didn't you hear what I just said?" "I heard you. You said take you along," Natsu replied with complete confidence. "You only heard the last 3 words?" Lucy slapped her forehead and sighed as if the world had collapsed. A cold snort of disdain cut through the guild from the second-floor corridor. "I really don't know if the old man's gone senile or not, only recruiting such weak, useless trash." A man in a sweater jacket, short hair, and a fierce, arrogant expression leaned over the railing, looking down. At the sight of him, the guild fell silent. "Oh, Laxus, you're here," someone offered. Chess stepped forward, placing himself between Lucy and the corridor, his face unreadable. Lucy peered up nervously. This man felt more dangerous than most guild members. Happy flew up beside her and explained in a whisper. That's Laxus. He's an S-class mage, like Chess and the monster Urza mentioned." "The strongest candidate?" Lucy's eyes widened. Laxus lowered his disdainful gaze and met Chess's. The corner of his mouth tilted into a small, eager smile. "Chess, I heard you were back. I finished a request early just to come over." "As recycled trash, that kind of behavior suits you," Chess said with a calm smile. "What did you say?" Laxus's face went dark. "You called Lucy trash. Then, by your logic, isn't someone with the same hair color as her also trash?" Chess didn't flinch under Laxus's aura, though Laxus would later become someone who understood the importance of family and turn into one of fairy tale's most dependable people. Right now, he was in full rebellion, and more than asking for a beating. Lucy, hiding behind Chess, let her lip twitch. "Why do I feel vaguely offended?" You're still as annoying as last year," Laxus sneered. "People outside argue over whose fairy tale's strongest, you or me. No matter who else says it, the title of strongest belongs to me. Laxus!" He thrust his chest out and roared the proclamation. Boom! The word exploded like thunder. Lightning crackled as terrifying magical power surged from Laxus like a volcanic eruption, suffocating the air and forcing even Natsu and Gray to stagger. "Chess, that match we left undecided last time ends now." Bathed in lightning, Laxus beckoned Chess with an arrogant curl of his finger. "Ready to get beaten down, Chess?" Chess smiled and produced a glowing card between his fingers. A dark, powerful aura burst from him and slammed into Laxus's electrons. The clash created a storm in the tiny guild hall. Tables and chairs flew like confetti. Black Magician Girl appeared beside Chess, her magic staff in hand, a slow magic circle turning beneath her feet. As a card monster, she obeyed Chess without question. Wait, S-Class against S-Class? The normally fearless members of Fairy Tail were suddenly pale. They could only imagine the destruction if Chess and Laxus went all out. Lucy's legs shook. This whole thing had started because of her, despite it not being her fault, and she stepped forward, ready to take responsibility and break up the fight. Before she could, Mira grabbed her and yanked her back. Confused, Lucy looked up, and then the air split with another violent surge of magic. A dark purple circle bloomed amid the storm, and everyone looked on in disbelief and horror. Mira. No. It was Mira Jane in Satan's soul form, the demon Mira. She stood there, eyes cold and deadly. Laxus, she said icily, this is the guild. Control yourself and stop this now. Laxus's eyes widened. The arrogant expression faltered as a long-buried memory flared in him. A few seconds of tense silence, and then he snorted and slowly withdrew his magic, retreating with obvious displeasure. Chess, you too, Mira added, looking at Chess. Chess shrugged, the card dissolved into motes of light. Black Magician Girl relaxed her stance as well. With an interfering observer present, we'll stop here, Mira said coolly. One day I'll tell you who the true strongest in this guild is. With that severe warning, Laxus dissolved into a streak of lightning and vanished from the corridor. I'll be waiting for that day, Laxus, Chess answered, looking up at the second-floor landing where static arcs still lingered. The Thunder Palace incident had been the turning point for Laxus from rebellion to maturity. Right now, he had no real intention to fight. It would be reckless. Chess had only stepped out to support Lucy. Lucy, having seen the gentle, warm Mira turned into the terrifying demon Mira for the first time, found herself speechless. That soft, gentle girl was actually so terrifying. Around the square table in the guild, Chess, Lucy, Natsu, and the others were gathered. Lucy's exclamation cut through the chatter. What? 700,000 J for just one set of photos? She'd read it in Black Magician Girl. Magic Weekly was offering that much for a photo shoot, and her eyes shone with envy. She, Natsu, and Happy had risked their necks at the Duke's castle to destroy those books for hardly anything. And in the end, they hadn't even been paid. Her rent was 70,000 J a month. That meant one photo shoot could cover 10 months of rent. It's probably safer than a subjugation request, but actually doing it isn't easy, she muttered. Mira came over with beers and snacks, set them on the table, and gave Lucy an encouraging smile. If you're interested, I could recommend you. Lucy instantly deflated. No, I couldn't possibly. She still remembered the Canis Minor key incident at the magic shop in Harujian. Her attempt at flirting had earned her only a 1,000 J discount. Don't be so modest. You're super cute, and you have a great figure, Mira said, eyeing her matter-of-factly. Chess took a long pull of beer and laughed. That's true, but for some reason I don't think many people fall for Lucy's charms. Come to think of it, from the bald old man in the item shop to the guards at the Grand Magic Games gate, Lucy's attempts at seduction had never really worked in the original story. If it's just a feeling, Chess, please don't say that out loud next time, Lucy pleaded, worried. One day, compared to being a cover girl, Lucy might be more suited for a job as an editor, Natsu said, chin propped on his hand as he slurped steaming noodles, surprisingly serious. After all, you've been secretly writing. Before he could finish, a blushing Lucy swung and sent him flying. He hit a pillar and spat noodles and foam everywhere. Lucy, so scary. Happy shivered. Oh my, I almost heard a very interesting secret. Mira grinned to herself, putting the pieces together. Editor, secretly written, must not be known by others. Lucy's face fell. As Levy had said, having her novel found out would be like being seen with her pants down. She felt as if someone had yanked at the hem of her skirt. It slid down in her shame for a terrifying second before Mira tucked it right back up with a belt, steadying her. Gossip? Mira asked, eyes wide. You mean? Yes. Happy told me you even bought gossip about me and Chess. Lucy shot at her. The betrayal in her glare could have sunk a ship. Happy, sensing the murderous intent, whisked into the air at top speed and, after a safe distance, defended his actions with a smug air. Mira bought me a grilled fish, so I can't be blamed. Lucy was outraged that she'd been sold for a fish, fists clenched. But when her eyes met Mira's gentle smile, the anger melted away and she collapsed into the table with a relieved sigh. Mira, let me explain. It's fine, Mira said, placing a finger to her cheek. If you want this kind of information in the future, just ask me. I know more than happy, and I don't charge. That was Mira, kind and unbothered by small things. Her little teasing grin had been more for fun than malice. Once it was obvious she wasn't actually angry, Lucy relaxed completely, leaning back as if reborn. The others, though, were tense. A glance from Mira could reveal more than anyone liked. Many of them had secrets that would be explosive if exposed. Before they could joke their way out of it, the guild door slammed open. Sunlight poured in, cutting a long shadow. Makarov, wearing his top hat, stepped inside with a grim expression and immediately zeroed in on Chess. Natsu and Gray both stiffened and slid protectively to either side of Chess, quietly putting themselves between him and the guildmaster. Neither of them knew why Makarov looked so serious, but instinct said it wasn't a good moment to be standing in the open. Lucy froze too, unsure whether to run. Mira, however, greeted him serenely. "Guildmaster, you returned from the council so quickly?" Makarov nodded to her, then strode straight to Chess, braced himself, and leapt up onto the table. Chess sat there steady as an old dog. For a heartbeat, everyone braced for the worst. Then Makarov's stern face cracked into a grin so big it changed his whole posture. He gave Chess a thumbs up. "You did a splendid job this time." The little old man's laugh filled the hall. "Ha! I haven't felt this proud in a long time. Seeing those arrogant men on the council look like they'd eaten something awful. It felt fantastic." Makarov explained that when he'd gone into the council that morning, he'd expected to be scolded. Instead, he'd come out walking tall. News of the Irmo Relic Island incident had spread. Many rescued citizens had penned letters to the council, thanking Chess and Fairy Tale for saving them, and some had even gone to the branch office in person to ask the council to pass on their gratitude. The surprise and the thanks had lifted Makarov's spirits. He was so overjoyed, he joked about wanting to kiss every dog he passed. Excitement rippled through the guild. "A banquet! We must have a grand banquet today to celebrate," someone shouted, and soon the hall was alive with cheers. With the town's newspaper boys spreading the story, news of Chess's deeds began to travel fast across Fiore. In Onibas City, in a noisy magician's bar, a woman in steel armor with long, fiery red hair set down a newspaper and smiled. "You really know how to make a scene," she murmured, eyes soft and expectant as she looked at the familiar face in the article. "It's been almost a year since we met, hasn't it? Chess." Chapter 39. There's an Affair. Please read. Magnolia. The Fairy Tale Guild Hall thrummed with the raucous energy of a banquet. Natsu and Happy's hot dance, Gray's half-hearted strip show, Beasta's awkwardly charming performance, Shadowgear's wild posing, Kana drinking like it was her job, one bizarre act after another filled the floor. Is this a fairy tale banquet? It's even more, eye-watering than I imagined. Lucy sat alone in a corner, scanning the chaos but feeling oddly out of place. That's normal. In this kind of situation, you just need to look out for yourself, a cute, playful voice said. Lucy looked up and brightened when she recognized the speaker. Black Magician Girl. Black Magician Girl sat across from her, casually watching the noisy center of the hall and sighing softly. After more than a year, everybody hasn't changed much. It's like their energy never runs out. That's a perfect description, Lucy agreed wholeheartedly. Then she remembered what Black Magician Girl had said and tilted her head. Oh, right, you said look out for yourself. What do you mean by that? At that moment, an empty wine barrel sailed from the middle of the room straight toward where they were sitting. Black Magician Girl had expected it. She flicked her wand and knocked the barrel back. With a loud dong, it hit something. Whose head? No one knew. Nice, a perfect home run, she crowed, striking a cute victory pose. I think I get the idea, Lucy said. As if on cue, Lucy quickly plucked Happy out of the air and held him in front of her like a shield. Celestial spirit magic, Happy shield. Lucy, what are you doing? Happy, used as a meat shield, blinked in confusion. Shut up, you dead cat. I still have to get back at you for leaking info to Mira, Lucy snapped. Happy was about to retort when a slipper came flying toward him. His head cocked, his expression flattened, and his white soul promptly slipped out of his body. Ha ha, personal protection, perfect success. Black Magician Girl struck the same peace sign pose Lucy had copied. The two blonde girls grinned at each other like kindred spirits. Oh, right, your super cute celestial spirit Plu, isn't it? Can you summon him so I can hug him? Black Magician Girl asked. Of course. Open, Gate of Canis Minor. Black Magician Girl cradled Plu and nuzzled him. Then she glanced at the pink staff casually set beside her. What kind of magic do you use? Lucy asked. It's dark magic that Master taught me, Black Magician Girl replied. Master's magic is incredibly advanced, but he dislikes crowds and rarely appears. Black Magician Girl has a master too? Dark magic. That already sounds amazing. Lucy's eyes shone. I'll ask Master to introduce you someday. If it's him, he can definitely help you get stronger. Black Magician Girl promised. Really? Thank you. Lucy beamed. Meanwhile, away from the center of the hall at the bar, Chess and Mira stood side by side while Makarov perched on the counter. So that's it. I didn't expect something like that to be behind the S-Class pirate subjugation request, Makarov said after hearing Chess's account of the Irmo Relic Island incident. If such a huge conspiracy had been hidden behind the request, it wasn't just any S-Class task. It could be upgraded further, maybe even to SS Class. Above SS Class came the 10-year and 100-year requests. Mira, organize the relevant information and send it to the council. Those old men were already pressing me when I got back. Understood, Mira nodded with a slight smile. Chess, you'll come with me to Kuriboh town tomorrow for the Guildmaster's regular meeting. This incident has stirred things up. We need to deflate the other guild's arrogance properly. Thinking he'd finally get to show off at that meeting, Makarov couldn't hide his excitement. Kuriboh town's Guildmaster's meeting, huh? Chess agreed without hesitation. No problem. Makarov and Mira exchanged surprised glances. Chess usually hated meetings. Why did he agree so readily this time? This isn't like you, Makarov said, frowning. Chess just smiled and said nothing more. By the end of the banquet, it predictably dissolved into a free-for-all, but with Makarov present, the chaos was quickly brought under control. Under his scolding, the revelers who had finished their daily activities began taking suitable requests and left one by one. In his spare time, Chess had gone to the council with Black Magician Girl to hand over Clooney, the Dark Guild Master who'd been sealed in a card. They'd used a card-sealing technique the card mages excel at to detain him temporarily while rushing to Irmo Relic Island. A series of events followed, and it wasn't until now that Chess could close the book on the S-Class request. Thanks to his previous merits from the Galuna Island incident, the handover at the council went smoothly. Chess collected the 9,900,000 J fee Marshall had left at the council. By the time he returned to the guild, it was dusk, the sun already dipping. Mira waved when she saw him. You're back, Chess. A few magicians from Black Griffin have been waiting for you. Hearing that familiar guild name, Chess's mouth twitched. Of all places, they'd come all the way to Magnolia. And now he had to deal with Black Griffin? Bad luck. Following Mira's gaze, Chess spotted Black Griffin's magicians sitting and chatting with Lucy and Kana. Ina, Bouquet Lywin, Dasha New. So it's you, he said. Recognizing them, Chess laughed. I told you it was just a small favor. There's no need to come to the guild just to thank me. Lucy and Kana flashed looks of disdain. Then the tall, busty Ina stood quickly, cheeks flushing, and marched up to Chess. She thrust out a fair hand and demanded, "Give back the money." Chess blinked. This wasn't the gratitude he'd expected. Apparently, after agreeing with Chess to share the merchant ship's losses, the Black Griffin trio had returned to the port with Sea Guard help. They'd waited from evening to night, through the night, and into morning, but there was no sign of Chess. Realizing they'd been stood up, they had no choice but to reluctantly pay the compensation, which far exceeded the request fee, to the merchant ship's captain. Then they'd come straight to Fairy Tale to collect what they were owed. Sorry. I'm really sorry. A lot happened, and I totally forgot, Chess stammered, looking to Black Magician Girl. His money was usually kept by her. It was easier to carry in a card. He asked the amount they'd paid, and Black Magician Girl immediately produced the funds and handed it over, including the extra for Ina and her teammates. Chess had earned several million J from an S-class request. Money wasn't a problem. Ina took the payment in a daze, staring at Black Magician Girl as if trying to place her. So cute, so beautiful. The girl who handles Chess's money, are they a couple? The short-haired teammate fidgeted, embarrassed and insecure. In truth, the trio had not come for the money alone. The courage to come to Fairy Tale had required more than that. All right, the matter's settled. Black Griffin, you can leave now, Mira said, clapping. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes held a sharp edge. After all, we're different guilds. Without formal guildmaster paperwork, staying too long could cause trouble. Though Ina still had things to say to Chess, she and her teammates left with a forced, sorry to bother you, and headed out. Lucy, who had been quietly snacking and watching everything, had her detective instincts working. She watched Chess, Mira, Black Magician Girl, and the departing Ina, eyes flicking between them. Finally, Detective Lucy reached her conclusion. They're involved, she said, rolling her tongue. Chapter 40. Good evening. Lucy night had fallen, and the city river glittered with starlight and moonlight. Lucy left the guild and walked home alone. Plu teetered on the railing, his little steps looking as if he might topple any second, but he was steadier than he looked. Hey, miss, watch your step, called a fisherman who was packing up. Lucy smiled and waved, then kept walking with her head bowed. Her mind replayed the day over and over. Laxus, stronger even than Natsu and Gray, seemed impossible to get close to. The strongest female mage Natsu mentioned, some terrifying woman who could shatter mountains with a wave, sent chills down her spine just thinking about her. Even friendly Mira had a fearsome demon form. The S-class mages in the guild were all terrifying powerhouses. And yet, Chess. Compared to Chess, the guild's so-called Destroyer King suddenly felt almost approachable. He said hurtful things sometimes, and his presence was suffocating when his aura exploded, and he liked to act reckless. But when he stood up to Laxus for her today, Lucy remembered the gentleness in his eyes. Growing up wealthy but emotionally distant, she'd never felt so protected, like being looked after by an older brother. That was what had always drawn her to Fairy Tale. When she was small, a rabbit-eared older sister with a fairy tale mark on her hand had once saved her from a runaway carriage. The landlady was right. When danger came, Chess's side really was the safest. Lucy walked faster, feeling light and giddy. She'd heard so many amazing stories that day. The Dark Guild Master who fled to sea, the legendary 18 demon gods of air, Mira and Lasana's pasts, even the master of the Black Magician Girl. She couldn't wait to get home and write them all into her novel. Plu scurried to catch up. At her rental, Lucy unlocked the door and sang to herself, a nice long bath, then some peaceful writing. Perfect. Light spilled from her open door, though, and she froze, mouth twitching. She choked and spat a mouthful of old blood. Pfft, why are there so many people in my room? Chess, sitting at her coffee table with a cup of tea, waved without looking up. Yo, Lucy, you're back. Good evening, Lucy, Black Magician Girl chimed, smiling and waving. Nah, you've got too few snacks at home. Buy some lamp oil, someone suggested offhand. Aye, the fish in the fridge are too small. There aren't enough. Natsu and Happy were squatting in the corner, secretly eating, not even bothering to look up. Who buys lamp oil as a snack? Dead cat, those are my fish, mine, Lucy snapped, bristling. She blinked and, recovering, added helplessly, and why are Chess and Black Magician Girl here too? Chess pushed a steaming cup across the table. Fresh tea. Thanks, Lucy said, taking it. Then, between a laugh and a sob, she felt 2 hot tears slip down her cheeks. She had the odd sensation of being at home, but also a guest. Chess laughed and explained, Sorry for barging in, Lucy. My place is under repair. The workers are fixing the door and ceiling, so I came here to sit for a bit. Lucy planted her hands on her hips and feigned sternness. This is clearly illegal entry. I could call the police and have you all arrested. Chess took a calm sip and said casually, You may want to check your own memory. You smashed my front door and ceiling the night before last. You left me homeless. Lucy's bravado evaporated. I'm so sorry. Really, I am. She dropped to her knees and bowed her head to the floor in a perfectly sincere apology. Natsu leaned over and whispered to Happy loudly enough to be heard. Hey, Lucy's so gullible. You were the one who kicked the door open, right? And Chess punched the ceiling himself. Should we prank her next time? Sounds like fun, heh? Happy replied. I heard all of that, Lucy muttered, cheeks burning. Dead cat, stop pawing at the fridge. You're scratching it with your filthy paws. Natsu scolded. That fridge looks like it's enjoying itself. Princess, I want one too. Happy said dreamily. A sudden voice from the doorway made Lucy swing around. Virgo? A purple-haired maid stood there, iron chains and shackles at her wrists and ankles, watching the fridge with an oddly envious expression. Lucy flinched. Where did you come from? Chess leaned back on the sofa, eyes narrowing. He'd been curious when Lucy mentioned getting the Virgo key at the guild. If the original timeline was right, Happy wouldn't have given the key that easily. It might be another butterfly effect from his transmigration, he thought. Natsu waved. Yo, Virgo. It's Virgo, she corrected flatly. Black Magician Girl leaned forward, curious. Lucy, who is she? Virgo answered as if it were obvious, her voice cool and composed. Hello, I am the princess's exclusive stress relief tool. Black Magician Girl's eyes went wide in disbelief, silently asking Lucy if she'd misunderstood something about her. No, it's not like that. Lucy hurried to explain, hair starting to stand on end under Virgo's stare. She stepped forward and introduced them properly. She's Virgo, the celestial spirit I just made a contract with, the maiden. And this is Black Magician Girl, Lucy continued, motioning. And Chess here is a card mage. She added for clarity, their relationship is sort of like a celestial spirit mage and a celestial spirit. Black Magician Girl is Chess's card summon. Virgo propped her chin on her hand, studying them with a blank expression. I see, she murmured. So they have a master-slave relationship. Is that robe-like thing a uniform? Lucy pressed a hand to her forehead and sighed. Are you sure you understand anything at all? My master and I have a much closer relationship than that, Black Magician Girl said with a bright smile. Master, she called out like a declaration. The single word made Virgo's eyes light up, and she looked at Lucy with obvious excitement. Lucy felt utterly drained. She gave up fighting and with tired steps sank into a seat opposite Chess and Black Magician Girl.